I love to see the towns passing by and to ride these rails neath God's blue sky. Let me travel this land from the mountains to the sea, 'cause that's the life I believe He meant for me. And when I'm gone and at my grave you stand, say God called home your rambling man.
Welcome to Ramblin' Man Podcast, episode number 129. This one's with Diane Gibbs, and we kind of work through her road to art and empowering creativity in others. Great talk. I've known Diane for a little while. Her involvement with Creative South. She's a great and positive light in this world. It was amazing to talk to her. Now, she has a lot of ways to connect with her. So let's go with, on Instagram, you can give her a follow at Creatives Ignite or at C Diane Gibbs. And her websites are littlebirdcommunications.com and rechargingyou.com. Make sure you listen to her podcast, Design Recharge. And I want to pre-apologize for a little bit of audio ineptitude on my end. I bought a new box to record through, and I can't get it to work exactly perfect. So I ended up eschewing all that and just recording directly into the computer mic. But Diane sounds good and buttery, so that's all that matters. You don't need to hear me talk. You hear enough of that already. But I appreciate Diane for being on, and make sure you find her online. Sponsor this week is Feral Giant. Feral Giant is a graphic design, illustration, and social media consultation company based here in Knoxville, Tennessee. So they do work for clients big and small all over the country, all over the globe, in fact. But they also do photography, videography, video editing, and audio editing, website design, SEO, writing, content development. Hell, they'll babysit your kids if it nets them money. So make sure you give them a follow on social media on either Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or LinkedIn at Feral Giant. And be sure to give them an email today and hire them for your next project. Without much further ado, here's the episode.
You've got the Yeti mic.
Yes. This is a Blue Yeti. This is the third one I've bought. So I have two that still work, but one's at school and one's here. But one died. And so my husband's like, I'm going to make something out of that. He's a welder. And I'm like, okay, go for it. 'Cause it stopped working. But for $129, it's a pretty good mic.
If he wants another one, mine died on me. I think it was, I found a little adapter to put on the mic stand that it actually just rested on top of it. So I could have it like open space. And I think I knocked it over one too many times and it's just busted. And I was like, I know I need to buy another. I need to just buy another because it was the best thing. It was the best.
I like it too. This is stuff my husband makes. So he took a whatever wine thing, and they look like people, and then he just put some spoons. He made me a spoon or a fork necklace that looks like octopus, but it only has four or however many tines, like legs. They're in different spots. And I asked people, I'm like, do you know what this is? And they're like, an octopus. And I'm like, but what was it before? And they're like, I don't know. I'm like, it was a fork. And I'm like, I think that's the coolest thing.
Yeah.
He also took a bed frame, Hollywood bed frames. I know you're like, oh, Diane, this isn't part of the question.
No. But, this is how the podcast will start. So people have already been listening for this.
Okay, great. So in the the Hollywood bed frames are like the cheap ones that when you're when you're first buying a bed, they're like, you buy a mattress and a box spring, or that's how it used to be. And then they would give you this really cheap metal frame. And I don't know. My husband is like hammers. He just doesn't have to. We have hammers, not real hammers, but it's just like a junkyard in our backyard, a lawnmower graveyard mostly. Because he fixes small engines for people, and he's like, "Well, I can make something out of this." I'm like, "Okay." Anyway, so we've had these Hollywood bed frames leaning against trees. I mean, we have multiples of them, and I'm like, "Oh man, I feel like I'm Sanford and Sons, like living there." And I'm like, "Okay." And I just don't, we got 4 acres. I'm like, you know what? I don't care. There's not like a, whatever you call if you live in a subdivision homeowners association, like there's none of that here. And I'm like, I don't care. But I would like to know what we're going to do with these bed frames. Anyway, so he made a bookshelf and is the coolest bookshelf. So he welded it. You would never be able to know. Like this thing he made me, I have a bookshelf above where my desk is and stuff. And but it's all made with like aluminum, and he welded it really nice and it shined it up and stuff. But his bookcase is like heavy duty. It's a bed frame, and I'm like, this is so cool. He's like, do you want to switch? And I'm like, no. But because his is for his desk, like it's specific, mine's made for my desk. Anyway,
that's awesome. Yeah, I have an uncle. I designed this CD frame rack right behind me, and he built it. And we built this massive bookcase in my living room too. But it's all like, this is still rough. It was never painted. I think it was barely sanded. I was like, no, this is exactly what it needs to be. It's always going to be surrounded. But I have talked to a woodworking friend. I was like, I eventually want to get built-ins on this wall, because these old VHS tapes and everything, it's driving me bonkers. But I don't know what to do. I can't throw it away. I have to keep. I'm like your husband. I have all these ideas. I have all these grand schemes.
Yeah, and those are fun. And it's like you just have to have time. But I was glad they finally made something with them. Like I was like, oh my gosh, because I just don't see a Hollywood bed frame and think, I can make something with that. I'm like, a bed, like that's it. That's all I could see. But he can see things that I just can't see. And he's a more 3-dimensional thinker. And anyway, I just love that.
That's awesome. Bed frame making a bookshelf is a great idea, because you always worry about the bow when it comes to wood. But something like that, man, super.
Yeah. And it's pretty thick. Like the Hollywood bed frame. I think that I got my first mattress and box spring for like $150 when I was living in Denver. It wasn't the best. It was the cheapest. It was like the mismatch. They're like, well, this price, the top of the bed and the bottom and the sides don't match. I'm like, who cares? I got a mattress pad and a sheets on top. I'm not living in a crack house where maybe they care about the mismatched sides and tops. No one's going to see that for me, not that anybody, but I'm like, who cares about this? Really? Like somebody's like, oh, the top doesn't match the sides. I'm like, who sees it? Anyway.
Yeah.
I sleep with sheets. I don't know. Maybe other people don't, but I'm dirty. I guess I have to wash often. And I need to wash sheets. I can't. I'm not clean enough just to lay on the,
on the bed itself.
Yeah. Anyway, we keep our beds for a long time. My parents have the bed that they used to sleep in when we were kids is the bed that John and I have to sleep on when we go to their house. And every year John's like, you think we should get him a bed this year for our room? Because it's like a cavern. It's like we come together. Really, it's like we're fighting to stay close to the edge. And our poor dog sleeps in the middle. And so it's like we're killing Jack this week, Anyway, we're not. But
I just threw out a bed that I've had for 20 years. That it was because it was really nice. It was springs, but it had the box. It had the quilted stuff on the top, but it had finally gotten to the point. Used to, it was like, okay, every 6 months I'll flip it, and it'll be fine for like 6 months. And then it was like, I have to start flipping it every 2 weeks. I was like, all right, I need to get rid of this. And so I have a spare bed that, funnily enough, some friends, when they bought a house, they bought a second bed, and then they downsized their life, went out on the road in an Airstream. So they just gave me that extra bed. So it had never been used except for a few times when friends. So that's what I'm sleeping on now. But now that I'm sleeping on, I'm like, I need another bed. This thing's too firm for me. I'm used to the other one. So this one has no give, and I'm too big. I'm just like, oh God, my back. Oh, my back. Oh, my back. No.
Yeah. Sleep is really important. And I've fought sleep for a long time. I don't know. Do you sleep well easily?
No. And
what's your problem
I
sleeping?
a lot of times I'll be so tired I can't get to sleep.
Oh.
And I can't wake up early. Like if I go to bed at 8 p.m., if I have to wake up at 8 a.m., I'll still feel tired. I don't know what it is. I think it's my mom. That's how my mom was or is. And it drives me absolutely bonkers. And now that I'm a little bit older, I can't sleep through the night. I wake up multiple times. But I have found something in the last month. I know this has been a thing for a while, but Amazon had a daily deal, and I bought a weighted blanket. And you put that thing on now that it's wintertime, and it's just like, oh my God, I slept like 6 straight hours, which is a miracle for me.
Oh my gosh. I'm a huge believer. I don't have a weighted blanket. Pretty much I do weighted blankets because I have like 5 quilts on the bed.
Yeah.
And my husband's like, I am suffocating. How do you sleep under all this? I said, I think as a kid, that makes that I had, even in the summer, I would sleep with something on me. In 5th grade, I watched Poltergeist. This was probably a terrible, terrible idea for somebody who has a vivid imagination. I was like, oh my gosh, the trees outside, they're coming to get me. I'm probably living on top of a cemetery. And I would just sleep with all this heavy covers, and I would sweat to death. Like I would, and my mom was like, wow, do you want to take these off? I'm like, no, don't take them off. They're protecting me. And I don't know why, but I did feel like they were. I really like. So when weighted blankets came out, I got it. I mean, I understood it because I already mimicked that with the 5 quilts or blankets that I have. I do have 3 quilts on my beds, and they're old, like made with cotton. My granny, like old, heavy, but I love them. Oh.
My dad used to yell at me because when I was a kid, even in the wintertime, fan on high, lots of blankets. And he'd be like, what are you doing? I was like, I don't know. This just creates a perfect environment for me. So that I was talking to somebody about that the other day. I was like, my buddy Sean and I sit around and smoke cigars, and we were talking. I was like, dude, we're getting into my good season where it's nice and cold in the house and I get under all those blankets, and it's amazing. And we talked about that for like 30 minutes, like 2 idiots who are both in their mid 40s, just being like, isn't that just the best? It's like, what has happened to us? We're not talking about how hot Jennifer Lopez is anymore. We're talking about, oh man, when it's ice cold in the bedroom and it's heaven. It's the best.
But there's a friend of mine, Eric Corum. He worked at a bunch of like SEC schools, I'm pretty sure. And with football players, and then he worked in the NFL, and he's a sleep specialist. He's a PhD. He's a doctor. And so, but I don't, not like you're going to go cough and he's going to tell you what's wrong, but about sleep. And he said that is what we should be. It should be cold, like the cave, right? And one of the things to do is to set your circadian rhythm in the morning and then at night. And he said, for people who wear glasses, you need to go outside for at least, he told me 3 minutes. So I would I'd set me a timer for 3 minutes because I was going back in as soon as I got that 3 minutes. But he has since said 10 minutes is best. So if you're outside and you can walk and just look at the sun, obviously not directly, we don't want to burn any retinas or anything, but that's setting your circadian rhythm in the morning. And then again, do that in the evening, and then you will go to bed. And I used to have a nightlight. Like I just liked being able to see to go to the bathroom. I've been on blood pressure medicine since I was 30. It's hereditary. And so I've always had to get up and go to the bathroom. I have a huge fear of wetting the bed. Jody, I know that's probably the first time anybody said that to you on your podcast, but that is my huge fear of wetting the bed. Because I did in third grade, and I'm like, I will never do this again. Anyway, so and I have a tiny bladder. So I will get up and I will go to the bathroom multiple times. I needed the light. And he's like, your light is probably one of the things that's holding you back from sleeping really well. He's like, it needs to be like a cave, cold. You get under the blankets, no light, and I still have the blinds open. I can still see the moon and stuff like that. So I feel like that's okay. But he probably would say it wasn't. But that is another thing to help sleep. I'm just terrible about sleeping.
I have blackout curtains, have had blackout curtains for a few years. But the thing that he would probably fuss at me about is I have to stop my brain from going everywhere. I have to have multiple things going. So I have like a noisemaker that just makes the steady noise throughout the night. And then I have to turn on the TV and listen to something. And it's usually like a director's commentary of film, or right now I've gotten hooked on just turning on like Pluto TV Live and having a sitcom or something, and turn it down just low enough to where I'm not engaging, but just enough to where I was like, otherwise I'll just sit there and my brain will go 5 million miles an hour. And I haven't figured out how to stop that. To where I'm going to visit a friend in Greenville, South Carolina, and she's like, you can just stay at the house with me and my kids. I was like, no, I'm old enough. I'm going to do a hotel room because I need my things to help me sleep. Otherwise, I'm going to be miserable. I'm going to be a mess.
Yeah. My husband likes the TV. I can't do that. So, but I'll sleep. I'll turn Audible on, or there's a app called Abide that's like a meditation, but it's like a Christian meditation. And so they're just telling you stories and stuff, and I'll listen to that and I can go to sleep because I don't have to engage, I guess.
Yeah.
But sometimes when I get into a book that I really like, that I'm like, oh man, I will be up because I'm like, oh, what's the next? And the Audible has like, you could do it for 15 minutes, 30 minutes, and then it goes off. And sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, we're going to keep listening tonight, but most of the time I just need something to put me to sleep.
When you said Abide, I was like, oh, is that the Jeff Bridges sleep app? Because Jeff Bridges has a sleep app. And I was like, oh, the dude abides from The Big Lebowski. That's what
right.
It's like, oh, that's what that one's called. Wow, that's a little on the nose for him to call it Abide. But
it's a good one. There's like, you can there's multiple speakers, and so if you like some of the people, I'm like, oh, I can't listen to these people. It just makes me upset. And so, but then there are some people, and my favorite is James C. Wood. He has an awesome voice. And then there's a Tyler Boss. And I'm like, man, his last name is Boss. Like, what? Anyway, but those are the two. I'm like, I don't care what you're talking about. You can put me to sleep anytime. But otherwise, before I go to sleep, I usually watch a Skillshare or something. And I go to sleep way before my husband, and John will be like, or I listen to things at 1.5 usually on Skillshare because I'm like, these people are talking a little slow.
Yeah.
I'm like, I got it. I can get it. And he's like, are they speaking in English? And I'm like, yeah, they are. And now my husband's from Mobile, Alabama. And so he has a good Southern drawl. And he's like, that is too fast for me. And I'm like, he's like, you'd probably speed me up if you could, huh? And I'm like, sometimes, buddy, sometimes, There are some people, if I see them in real life, I'm like, I don't know if I could be in the same room with them because I think they talk too slow.
See, I look at it as whenever I travel and people are like, oh, I love your Southern accent. I was like, I can't hear yours because I know people living in the sticks that I need subtitles when they're going. Like,
amen.
I do not know what they are saying. It's just like, did you just say crick? I know that word, but I'm trying to piece two and two together in my head of how are we going to the creek? Did you come from the creek? What is happening here?
Right. I've had some of that with some of my cousins. I'm like, I have no idea what they just said.
Yeah.
And I mean, I grew up in Atlanta, so I definitely my students in Mobile, they are like, oh, where up north are you from? I'm like, Northeast Atlanta? I don't know, like they were like, and I remember when I went to Auburn, my teachers or people would be like, well, where are you from? And I'm like, I'm from Atlanta. And they were like, oh, and they were like, well, where are your parents from? And I'm like, North Georgia and South Georgia. And they would be like, how do you sound like that? I'm like, well, my parents sound like y'all, but I don't. And because I went to high school with people from Chicago and Oregon and, I don't know. So I don't have that. But I remember when I came here, this one guy was like, they don't have bugs like this in New York City. And I'm like, I'm just gonna walk away. Like, I don't know. I've only been to New York City once, but we had bugs like this in Atlanta, Anyway.
I went up to New York a bunch of years ago. I was visiting a friend who I grew up with, and she introduced me to this guy that was a friend of a friend, and he and his brother were from Mexico, like born and raised there, and had moved up there, and they were cooks, or at least the guy was a cook in a kitchen up there. And he came out and hung out with us and was drinking beer. And I was telling him, I was like, man, he was talking about my accent. I was like, dude, I don't have an accent, man. You can't, because I'm from the city in East Tennessee. Knoxville is the city. Like, you're not, anyway. And I was like, but I can turn it on because I've been around enough of those guys, those rednecks, that I can, how y'all doing over here? We're going to go.
Right.
Like, do that. And I was like, and it benefited me one time in New York. I was up there and some dude got in my face. And I just sat there and listened to him talk. And I went, Bubba, I reckon we're fixing to have a problem. And he just tapped me on the chest and walked away. And that guy was like, what did you just say? And I was like, Bubba, I reckon we're fixing to have a problem. He was like, I don't know what the term reckon means. And he was like, and how'd you say it? I said, reckon. And so he just sat there and started going, reckon, trying to do it. And his brother was in there mid-beer, like, you're an idiot. Like, just started making fun of it. I was like, this is the greatest, man. I'm teaching a dude who was born in, who would ever guess this would ever happen? We're in a dive bar in Brooklyn, and I'm teaching a guy from Mexico how to speak redneck.
Right. That's too funny.
This is what I live for right here. This is the greatest. But yeah. Okay. So you're originally from Atlanta. Now, were you Atlanta proper, or because I know it just keeps
going. So I grew up northeast outside of the perimeter.
Okay.
That's where I grew up. And so I had enough of the city. And so I love football, and I grew up going to Georgia games. My parents both went to Georgia, and my mom's from about 30 minutes outside of Athens. So she's one of 11, and every one of her siblings, except maybe 4, I don't know, there's a lot of them. I'd have to count 4 or 5. Let's see who did go. So Betty, Mama, Charles, Randall, 4 of them, maybe one other, maybe Carl. They went to Georgia. So 4 out of 11, and it started like my mom's number 10. So I mean, that's these kids did not. They had electricity. They had a light bulb, one single light bulb, but they had outhouses. They picked cotton in the fall, and they were not wealthy children, and they got to go to college, or many of them, but they all loved the University of Georgia. And so we have like a family reunion every Saturday growing up. So I started growing when I was 5, and we got season tickets, and my parents still get season tickets. My mom My dad hasn't gone this year, but they both turned 80 this year. And my mom still goes. And she went with my sister for the Auburn game and then went last weekend with my cousin. And so there's her brother goes too, and her sister's on the other side of the field. We know where they sit, because they've always sat in the same spots. And
Yeah.
Anyway, it's fun. And so I knew I wanted to go to a college that had great football. And I, you're a junior in high school and you tootle around, and most of the people I went to high school with went to college. And so my sister had gone to Duke. Lord knows I was nowhere near going Duke ready. I could maybe visit. They would maybe for sure kick me out on Monday when school started. They would be like, you don't have the IQ for this. And I'm like, I know. So, but anyway, so my sister went to Duke. She's older than me. And then, and she stayed in North Carolina and loves North Carolina. And then, and I went to Auburn, and I was the only person at the time that went to an SEC school that wasn't Georgia. And so it was like, I remember going in, and my mom and dad are helping me move in. And my mom said, there's still a place for you in Athens. I mean, it was like,
I was about to ask, is like, how did they feel about that? Man,
it was pretty rough, but it was, I went at the best time. I loved Auburn. It was really, really good for me. And it was definitely the place that I was supposed to go, but it was Pat Dye's last season. And then Terry Bowden took over, and we were 11-0 and nowhere to go because we were under suspension, I think, but we were national champs during that time. And it was awesome. And so it was the early 91. I started in the fall of 91. And then I did 5 seasons because I was a 5th year senior, and I graduated in the spring of 96. So, and then but I knew Auburn was really, at that time, there was not a downtown. There was a downtown, but there was just Toomer's Corner and one other restaurant. There wasn't a coffee shop. There ended up, like my junior year, there became a Chinese restaurant downtown. Otherwise, what we did for fun was we would go to Walmart. Like that was the big thing. And I just loved, it was just so peaceful, and you could walk everywhere. And anyway, I loved Auburn, and I loved that there was football.
And it's weird because like Knoxville, I feel like was considered nothing but a college town until probably about 10 years ago, 10, 12 years ago. We finally started making the switch. And boy, howdy, with them doing good this year, the amount of my friends that are idiots that are just like, ugh, now we're only going to be, I was like, just let us have a year. We've gone through a lot of years of crap. Let us have one season to be happy. And they're like, yeah, but people who watch football are dumb. I was like, no, they're not. No, they're not. Stop talking. It's like, we're never just going to be a college town anymore. We've grown too much. There's no way. And so I've been going to games since before I can remember, like with my dad and uncles, season tickets. Like my uncle got season tickets in the 70s. He just started deciding to go. And so right behind him, my dad and the other brother, they were like, okay, we'll go too. And they've been going since the 70s.
Well, and that's what it was like for us. So in 78, I was 5. And so I was born in 73. So
I'd be curious when season tickets became a thing, because I bet you before that, it wasn't really a thing. Like you may have had boosters or something, but.
Yeah, I don't know. I know that was something that they wanted to do for us as a family. And I mean, I know I didn't know what was going on. I didn't understand football, and I was a girl. So it was kind of like they didn't necessarily, but we would throw the ball with our cousins, before the game in the parking lot. We would tailgate, and then we would walk to the stadium, and I would always go to the bathroom at the library. So I always know where the bathroom is almost everywhere, because again, I have a tiny bladder. And but like Athens was so big. And so for me, I was like, I mean, I love Georgia, absolutely love Georgia. but I knew that so many people from my high school were going there. And I was like, I want a new experience, so I looked at Auburn and I looked at Clemson and I looked at I don't remember where else, but for me it was like no doubt when I stepped onto Auburn's campus, I was like, this is the place for me.
Okay.
So
And never Alabama. Alabama was never.
No, Alabama was never. I did more recently got to interview with them and was maybe going to change jobs.
Yeah.
And I felt football, like I felt it, smelled it. I mean, it's a beautiful campus, old campus, and I would have loved to have been able to get back, go and experience, even if it's Alabama. I would have, my husband's an Alabama fan, so I probably watch more Alabama football than I do Auburn. I mean, I watch plenty of games,
Yeah.
but I can cheer more this season for sure for Alabama than I can for Auburn. It seems like Auburn is the high school team this year. I don't know.
Not a week ago.
Not a week ago, for sure. That was the best game I've seen this year.
I was there. And I couldn't hear for 3 days.
Oh, I bet.
It was 100. They put it up. I think it was 126 something decibels.
Oh, I bet.
Throughout.
Well, that's a big stadium. That's one of the biggest stadiums, I think, right?
Yeah, 103 something thousand. Yeah. And it was wild because like yesterday's game, I'm dating it for anybody listening at home, was homecoming versus UT Martin. And usually,
yeah, like 52-0 at halftime or something, right?
Yeah, usually because it's a lesser team, no offense, UT Martin, it'll be maybe 70 to 80,000 people. It was probably at 101,000. Like
way.
It was packed. And it was, we were just sitting around looking, and even at halftime, it was still packed. Kind of. The student section left right after halftime because they got their awards for best frat, whatever. But we were just laughing like, what is happening? We're not used to this. We're not. It's great. It's wild. There's something I thought about sorry, I don't mean to make it about
me. Please. No, go ahead.
I think you'll find this funny because I've been trying to figure out how to write this, and I wish I had a photo because this was so dumb. So I was in high school, I was playing football, and I had heart issues and had to stop playing football. I had muscle spasms in my heart. Now my coaches, God love them, said, "Oh, that's nothing. You can still play." These are also we had our water was a PVC pipe hooked up to a metal thing that the auto mechanics built. And I was like, oh yeah, that baking in the sun, I'm sure I don't have any mouth cancer from drinking hot water out of this PVC pipe. Twice a practice, lest you be a pansy.
Right.
And have cramp, like all that stuff. And I had to stop playing, and it really hurt me because I had to say no. I had to quit. They were like, no, this is normal. You'll be okay. But there was another guy here in town at Powell High School, Rudy Stenson, that he had signed to UT. He was who I looked up to, and he died of a massive heart attack at 18. And I was like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. I was like, I love football, but I don't know that I can play past high school. I can probably play past high school just based on my size.
Right.
But past that, probably not going to happen.
But your heart, you might not be able to.
Right. So I had to quit, and there was like a season or two where I would still go to UT games with my dad, but I wouldn't wear orange. I'd wear flannel, and I would take a tape player and listen to music instead of paying attention. Because that was my punk, my rebellion was I could not take being a part of it for like 1 or 2 seasons. That it really bothered me.
Yeah, I can relate. I can imagine. I think that that's like being forced to do something that was really joyful to you, and now you can't do it, but they're still sticking you in the front row, and you have to sit and you have to look like you're, paying attention or whatever. So I can only imagine. But in a way that you kind of have to grin and bear it for lots of things and what we do now. And it's like, I got through that, which was probably, I mean, that was lifelong, this lifelong love, you know?
Of Georgia. That's
Well, for you, for
yeah. Oh
Tennessee,
yeah,
right? It was
yeah.
just for football, lifelong love of.
Well, but in my mind, I think it's hilarious that my punk phase was wearing flannel and listening to probably Boys to Men and Shy and Garth Brooks and then Tool in my headset, just sitting there watching. I was like, oh, I don't care about this. That's my punk phase.
I like that rebellion, but at least you still went. That probably meant a lot to your dad.
Yeah. Oh God, those guys. That's what's funny is I am of an age where I will turn 44 in 3 days.
Oh, happy early birthday.
Thank you. And I was the only grandkid for like 10 years. And so my dad and my uncles treated me like a little brother. And so they are merciless. I was like, it's funny hearing people talk trash now to me. I'm just like, you're not even close, man. Like, come on. I was like, you could say whatever you want. It's never going to be as rough as my dad and uncles would say to me.
You're like, I grew up with grit. Yeah. Like they rolled me in it. So I was ready.
Oh yeah. I love telling the story about we grew up, we did not have money. We were pretty poor, but they like worked really hard. Like they were both blue collar. Dad was a truck driver. Mom worked for the phone company. And we would go to Myrtle Beach every year. And we only went because 20 other families went. And we were able to get a super deal on a hotel. But when we would go, my dad and uncles would take me bar hopping with them at like 4 and 5 years old. And so I was used to hanging out with them in bars at like 5 years old, drinking this, because this adorable picture, drinking my little virgin pina coladas or virgin Shirley Temples, because they came with a little sword with a cherry on it. And I collected the little swords. But yeah, those guys, but I don't know if this is, I've heard people say, I feel like this is a Southern thing, but I also think it's very much I'm trying to think how to talk about this. I want to say the term ethnic, as in people who, like Hannah is from an Italian family. They're all Italian. So they are Italian, although they are white and American, but they are Italian. I don't know the proper way to say that. So my heart is in the right place of trying to say it. But I feel like a very Southern and a very like Italian or Irish or whatever is you can pick on your family mercilessly, but if anybody ever tried to pick, no, then it just all turns out and it's complete brutalism. And so I got to see that also a lot when I was a kid, of just being like dad and uncles picking on each other mercilessly, and then somebody else popping in, they're like, nope. Like just set.
You're not part of our family.
No, you can't say that. I can say that. You can't say that. But anyway, okay. Originally from Atlanta, are they still kind of in that area?
They live outside of Athens. So they live about 11 miles from where my mom grew up. So my dad's from South Georgia. So from Atlanta, they moved in 2000. So they bought some land and built a house. And so they live about 30 minutes outside of Athens.
What did they do for a living?
My mom, before she got married, she worked for Georgia Power and she was a home economist. So she had taught school and she was like, that is not for me. And so she would help people like getting their first electric stove. They didn't know, if you were going from like a potbelly stove or something, right? And then you had to switch to a gas stove or electric, I guess. And so she would help people pick things out for their house because at that point they needed anyway. So my dad took 7 years to go through undergrad because he was paying for it. And so he went a few years to I don't know what it stands for, but it's ABAC. It's in South Georgia. And so he would go to ABAC and he was like, I remember it was $40 for all my classes for a semester. And that was a lot of money. So my parents were born in 1942. So it, my dad's parents never, my mama, my grandmother, his mom, had him when she was 17, and my papa, his dad, was 19. And so they were pretty close in age, like he has had a younger brother who was 15 years younger than my dad. So about the same distance in age from his parents as he was from his younger brother. So he was really raised alone, and they were really, really poor. They didn't have electricity and they didn't have running water until he was 5. And so he started working when he was 12, I think, and he worked at a grocery store. So my dad would work, and then, but his parents never went to college. And so that wasn't even in kind of the loop. And so my dad said he wanted to be an engineer one time to his dad. And he was like, my grandfather, Papa, thought he meant toot toot engineer, like driving a train. That was not what my dad meant. And he told my dad, he said, you need to be a doctor or a lawyer. So my dad went to school. He studied history and maybe some business. In 7 years, I'm sure he studied lots of things. But it wasn't like straight 7 would work, and then he'd get enough stuff, and then he'd pay for go to school, and then he'd come back home and he'd work. But when he was working, he would work for he got a job at Georgia Power. He wasn't like fixing lines or anything, but I don't remember what he was doing in the very beginning. But he worked for Georgia Power for over 30 years, and he got his degree at undergrad, and then he got a law degree. And so he was an attorney. He was over claims, like the director of claims or something. So when people would sue Georgia Power, he would be over the attorneys that were, I don't really know, do we really know what our parents do? But anyway, so my mom, when they got married, she quit, but they met because they both were working for Georgia Power. And so they had some mutual friends. And then my mom was a housewife, and I think I'm very lucky that she was able to volunteer a lot at our school, and she went to all our soccer games, and she was pretty much our chauffeur, I think, and but she cooked dinner. We had a good dinner every night, except when my dad was out of town. Then we would have hot dogs or pizza, which was always fun. We were like, sweet, I was always excited about hot dogs and pizza. Not together. Those were 2 separate meals.
I'm sure there's some hipster restaurant in Nashville or Brooklyn that does hot dogs on pizzas now.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, I would prefer them not on my pizza probably, but I'm a pretty picky eater, but so I'm very lucky that I was able, my dad, both of them. So in the South, and your parents may be too young for this, or maybe they weren't, because they were in the city. But in the country, in the fall, when the cotton is out now. So, because I pass by cotton fields on my way to work, and it's beautiful. It's how it snows in the South, I guess, right? Now, I know it snows in Tennessee sometimes, but down here it doesn't. And so, but they would get out of school, and you would go as a kid, like, I guess from like 1st grade to 12th grade, you would get out during a couple weeks in the fall to go pick cotton. And both my parents picked cotton. So like there's no animosity of doing that. It was just that all the kids got out, there weren't like rich kids where they lived and they didn't have to go pick cotton. Everybody would pick cotton.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I have a affinity for just that hardworking. And so in the fall, so right now it's peanut season. So the peanut plant is like, I don't know, I can hear it every night. Whoa, that's my white noise, but it seriously is loud. Like, I'm so glad. I mean, I don't live that far. I live like maybe a half a mile away from where the peanut plant is. Yeah. But once they pick the cotton, which is in a couple of weeks, they'll pick it, it'll start flying off the the trucks, and I just pick it up, and I always have cotton, real cotton in my car with the little seeds in it. And 'cause I just think that's a beautiful part of living in the South.
Well, some I know they lived in the city. Let's see. My dad was born in 1950, and my mom was born in 51. And his dad worked for the railroad as
Toot toot.
he was the engineer in the back in the caboose.
Oh,
And he worked nights. And I'll tell a funny story. There used to be a drive-in. I've lived within 5 miles my entire life.
oh,
And
wow.
there used to be a drive-in right behind us, and my grandfather would sleep during the day, wake up, take the boys and my grandmother, they would eat dinner and then go watch a movie at the drive-in, and then they would take him to the rail yard, drop him off, and then bring the boys back home, like almost every night that they could. Like, and then in the morning, my grandmother would she would drop the boys off at school and then go pick up my grandfather. So they were he did not make a lot of money. He was poor, but they always had a giant garden in their backyard, even though they lived in the middle of the city. And they were able to save up and bought like 2 acres out in the country and build an even bigger, now I'm
Garden?
It's not garden. It's at that point it's good Lord.
A
Garden.
greenhouse?
No, I'll say garden. They would have corn. They wouldn't have corn. They would have okra and tomatoes and stuff like that. And then my grandmother's sister had a giant corn farm. That's the word I was looking for.
Oh, yeah.
My grandmother's sister had a giant corn farm in Kentucky. It wasn't giant, but that's how they made their money, essentially. And so when the corn was in season, the boys and my grandparents would all pile in the car and go up to Kentucky and get all the corn they would need. Like, they were able to survive because they grew their own food.
Yeah.
For meat. And so when I was growing up, I would go up and help pick corn.
Yeah.
Pull the
Yeah,
silk.
beans.
Now, it wasn't
Oh,
coffee,
yeah.
but it was I had to do all that when I was young, watching my uncle have to till the garden in their backyard. And and the minute I was 10, once I turned 10, it was like, okay, you're old enough, you need to start mowing your grandparents' yard and trimming their hedge, like at age 10. It's like, you're
with a push mower.
Yeah, with a push mower. And then by the time I was 12, it was like, all right, you need a job. So I worked at a ballpark, keeping score and tending to the field at 12.
Yeah.
They were like, you're getting too old. You need a job. Like, what are you doing? Like,
That's awesome, though.
Oh, I feel you on the cotton thing. Yeah, it was wild. Like, hearing them talk about, oh yeah, we would go up there and spend like a weekend. I think it was almost the same thing of like when they would have a long weekend, I guess around Labor Day. Oh, I think they didn't go in back then. They didn't go back to school until after Labor Day. So
yeah, and corn might have been coming up then, so that there's still corn some now in October, but most of it is already, it's like a summer crop.
But going back to sleeping, my dad would always say the best sleep I ever got was on my grandmother's back porch where she had a tin roof and it would rain. He was like, I'm telling you, that's the best I've ever slept in my life, because all the 3 boys would sleep on the back porch while they were up there for 2 or 3 days to pick corn. Like, it's wild. Like, nowadays, no one has that anymore. And I'm not saying it's good or bad, but it's just wild to me.
Well, it's that family, kind of like that responsibility to your family. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
We had to pick crops at my grandparents. They had 5 or 6 acres, and we would go and pick green beans and shell butter beans. And I mean, that was but it was fun. We'd sit around and
green beans. Oh yeah. We would sit. So my grandfather, when he retired from the railroad, he got bored really quick.
I bet.
He got really bored. So at one point he was managing apartment complexes for somebody. I don't know how he happened upon that, but I'm gonna just reach down and grab records. I collect records. My dad and I have tons of records because there was a radio DJ that left his apartment and left boxes of records, and they were all the not for sale records that he would play, and then my grandfather, he could do anything: small engine repair, plumbing, electrical, everything, anything and everything. So I think that's kind of how he got that job. But then he got really into making keys, and here's another old thing that doesn't happen anymore. He sent off for a correspondence course learning how to make keys. So in the basement, he had a room that was just nothing but blanks on the walls and all broke. And anytime he would find, like, him or my dad would find a lock, my dad would just collect locks and bring them to my grandfather, and he would fix them and sell them. And he always carried a giant wad of ones in his pocket, and that was his. He would go to a lot of yard sales and auctions.
Oh yeah.
And that was his yard sales and auctions money.
Oh, I love that.
He would barely charge people. He'd be like, I'll redo the locks in your house and give you 4 keys and give me $5. Like, and my grandmother, sorry.
No, this is good.
I think these are things you'll enjoy that you may not. So my grandfather, I don't think ever set one foot in a church in his life, because he grew up very poor and very rough, very poor. His dad had 20-something kids,
Wow.
4 to 5 different wives, and he moved around a lot as a kid and just had a really rough time, and was kind of a hellion. Then went and fought in World War II in the Pacific in the most harrowing of things, and came back. He was like, I'm done. He's like, I want to have a wife. I want to have kids. I'm done with all that mess before straighten up his life. But still never. But my grandmother was in church 3 days a week. She volunteered. She did mobile meals. She did all that. But
mobile meals?
Mobile meals.
Oh, mobile meals. Oh, I'm like, I don't even know what mobile melts are.
But she volunteered all the time. She did all this stuff. But a lot of the women she was friends with, their husbands had passed away. So my grandfather would go do plumbing work, electrical, and he would, when I got old enough, he'd take me with him. I held the flashlight.
Yeah.
And I remember one lady across the street from us, after her husband passed away, he had to go work on her kitchen sink, and she tried to give him $5. He's like, no, give it to the boy. And like, he would not take money. Like, it was the best. So, and also a little side note, I realized in the last 3 years that the way I grew up was super weird and different, because I grew up with all that, but across the street from my grandparents was a couple that were in internment camp and concentration camps in Germany, and had the numbers on their arms. So I had to learn what that was at 5 or 6. And then the family that lived beneath my grandparents, that they had grandkids, they were Catholic. So I had to learn what Catholicism was at 5, and then going to church with my grandmother and my parents, who did not go to church. And it was just I was like, I am a weird. And then I grew up kind of on the black side of town and went to a high school that was 2/3 black, and growing up in that environment, usually being the only white boy in a group playing basketball or whatever. I was like, I realized that I'm weird. I grew up, I'm very lucky to have grown up in that environment that a lot of people did.
I remember you saying that before.
Yeah.
I remember that being sticking out. And I just love that, because you do have such a heart for just people who are different, right? Like people who are the different ones in a group, you will magnetize to them to make them feel like they belong.
I'm not going to give up what we were talking about before we hit record, but that's why I get so frustrated with people like I was talking about, the retreat person, because I was like, you don't know how lucky you are. I was like, I would love for you to acknowledge how lucky you are in your life. And maybe be open to more people who are different than you. I'd say a lot more negative things, but I won't say that here, but just I was like, I need you to recognize where you are at in life. Really.
Well, I think that is really important. Maybe that's why people feel like they need to escape, or because they're they don't recognize. I know that I feel like I am not grateful enough many times, but I know that I'm lucky. I know that my dad provided a life that he was not provided,
Yeah.
you know, and I am very thankful. And I'm thankful for all the things that uh just that they prioritize family. I think that I mean, I have my husband, and my mom would be like, you don't come home enough, you don't prioritize family. But
I think
but I
that's
do,
every parent. My parents say the same. My mom says the same thing.
but I talk to my mom every day, and even if it's just for a little bit, like I do prioritize. I just anyway, but I live 8 hours from them, so it's a good long drive. And I mean, like you, I work on the weekends. Do stuff for clients, and I'm catching up with other things that I'm doing too.
Okay, so you've mentioned one sister. How many kids?
That's it. That's
That's
just
it.
me and her.
So when you were growing up, like, were you always into art as a kid? Did your parents like shepherd that in you at all?
I think my dad, he can draw, and my mom was really craftsy. What do you say?
Crafty. I think crafty.
Crafty.
Yeah.
Okay. So my mom sewed, and she made a lot of things. I always felt like we were on the poor side of wherever we grew up. But like I mean, my mom made a lot of our clothes, and I got hand-me-downs. I was the youngest of all the cousins. So like I'm pretty short. So my mom could always cut off something, you know, and make it fit me. It wasn't like she had to add anything on. Um, so we got hand-me-downs a lot, and that was fine. I'm sure at the time I didn't think it was so fine, but that was okay. I was very glad to be warm. And and I mean, I was very blessed. I mean, I had lots of things, and lots of we played a lot. Our basement was when we moved from our first house to our second house, it had a basement. Well, we didn't have furniture for downstairs, so it was just this big open room. And my sister and I would pretend like we were horses. We were on horses, and we'd run around in circles. I'm sure my parents loved it because we were getting all our energy out, you know. And we would just run in circles downstairs in the basement. There was nothing in the basement, you know. We would pretend. I don't know. We did a lot of pretending.
Yeah.
And I remember I would draw, but I didn't start taking art classes. We had art at our school, so we went to art once every 2 weeks or something. I think it would be like art and music. But we did. I know my dad could draw. And then I took art in high school, and then I think that they saw something. And my art teacher, Mrs. Hale, was very entrepreneurial, and she knew that the Olympics were coming. So in my senior year, I remember her. So it was 91 or 90, whatever, when we found out that the Olympics were coming to Atlanta. And so she's like starting to do like drawings of Atlanta things with the Olympic rings, so she could sell them. She was selling them as prints, and she would sell them as cards, and she would like do the packaging, although she probably didn't realize that it was graphic design.
Yeah.
Like nobody knew what I mean, my parents didn't know what graphic design was. But I did
barely still know. Dad's like, I don't know, he designs menus for restaurants or something like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my mom comes to my podcast every week, and sometimes I'm like, I still don't think she knows exactly what I do. You know, she's like, I don't know, you just talk to people. But when fourth grade, I mean, I hate to read. I mean, I don't now. I love to read now, but as a kid, I hated. I think that I have some, I maybe it's a little dyslexia or something, but it took me a long time. I'm still a really slow reader. That's why I prefer Audible, that will read to me. But there wasn't that option as a kid, you know, and so I just lied to my parents. I'd be like, yeah, I read that book. and I did not read that book. And that was the last time I got spanked. I think I was in 4th grade or 6th grade, or anyway, I said I'd read it. My dad quizzed me on it. I got it wrong and I got a spanking. And I did not lie about reading a book ever again. I just said, no, I did not read the book. But so in 4th grade, there was a contest at my school and it was like bookmarks or something. I was like, I could make some bookmarks. Or maybe that was 6th grade. In 4th grade, I did this. I think it was in the summer. Bookmarks not that long, but Lord knows I wasn't going to use it for its proper use, actually reading a book. But I just made a whole bunch. I made a catalog and I called it the Bookmark Maker. And then in 6th grade, I did win a bookmark making contest and I got some free books, which of course was kind of useless for me. They should have given the award to somebody else that would really read. But I started loving to read as a sophomore in college. That was when, I don't know, I had enough time to read the book or something. Or anyway, but so they encouraged me in that we didn't just have tons of stuff to do. It wasn't like camp after camp after camp for me as a kid.
Yeah.
They said, go outside or go make something. And we made things with shoe boxes. Those would be our mailboxes. And we made all kinds of things. We were very crafty in a way. And I drew and painted, but it wasn't like it was good. It wasn't any good. But in my, I think sophomore year in high school, I took art in like, it was every week we would have art, or maybe it was every day. I don't remember. It was something. High school was a long time ago and I don't remember how it worked. I think maybe it was every day. We would go to art for a period. Right. And then I guess my parents saw that it was something I liked and I was good at. And they asked if I wanted to take some outside lessons. And so I went to this woman who her husband worked with my dad. She taught lessons for me and this other girl, but the other girl stopped coming, taught lessons for me in her garage. And we did like more traditional, like sizing. I don't ever think I learned sight sizing. Like if you're taking your pencil and you're measuring something just with the pencil, nobody ever taught me that, but that lady. And we drew from these, busts, or I drew a drawing that she had drawn, so anyway, I really liked it. So I went to school because I loved to be outside. My grandparents had a nursery, not like for little kids, but a nursery of plants.
Yeah.
And so we spent a lot of time outside, and being outside and doing stuff in the yard was really important. Or it was fun and just something my family did. And so I thought I would do landscape architecture, but I think there was a little too much math with that. And
There's a whole lot of math.
but I literally said that was what my major was. And then I changed to be graphic design within the first year. And I was going to do graphic design and business. And I did that through my sophomore year. I made 2 Ds in college, economics and accounting. And because my dad didn't want me to just do art, because I don't think he understood what, graphic design was, and that I'd be able to make a living. Anyway, he said at that point, after I made 2 Ds in the business, that I could drop the business major. Thank goodness.
I agree with it. I feel like every kid now that goes to college should have to take some business classes, because you never know when you're going to work for yourself.
I agree. I now where I teach, they have an entrepreneurship minor. Yeah. And I'm like, I would have been all over that.
Yeah.
So
to go back for a second, I hear a lot of outside. Were comic books or cartoons or anything something you were big into when you were young?
So I liked Archie, which I wasn't like a Marvel. I didn't know about that, but I liked, if you don't know, that's like a comic. And I had a bunch of Archie comics. I loved Peanuts. I loved Calvin and Hobbes. Yeah. So that's like a different kind of, but I mean, I have every single one of Calvin and Hobbes books probably on my shelf. And that was like the first way I enjoyed reading. So because reading was harder for me. I think that the comics of Archie or Peanuts or Calvin and Hobbes was something that I felt like I could grasp. Um, and we had these, I loved Hanna-Barbera. So Saturday mornings were cartoons when I was a kid, and Bugs Bunny, the Laugh Olympics, that was really fun. And we watched things in the afternoons that were, so I mean, we still were stuck in front of the TV. I'm sure my mom was, like, go sit in front of the TV, go watch TV or something. At some points, I had a lot of energy. At 44, or 45, one of the two, not that long ago, I was diagnosed with ADHD. And I think that would have been helpful as a kid. It was like really fighting a lot, not just internally, I felt bad, like I couldn't sit still. And it was just really difficult for me, I wanted to perform well. I wanted to be good. I wanted to be a good kid, but it was just really hard. I was chatty, and I had a lot of energy.
It pays off now.
Yeah, it pays off now. And I was very good at talking to people, anybody. And I think that, so I tried not to let something, because somebody else was different, I didn't let that stop me from talking to them.
And so I'm going to stick on for the kid for the second. Like
Yeah.
when you were a kid, did you all ever go to like art museums or anything like in Athens? Like,
No. So we went.
Was there any piece of art that like stood out to you that like made it click in your brain a little bit?
I think that we went to the High Museum in Atlanta in high school a couple times, maybe. Maybe with my family, but mostly probably with school. And I don't, I love stamps, like literal stamps, like I have some stamps right here in front of me. I have some stamps that this is my favorite stamp, and I keep it on my desk, and I know people can't see, but I can send you a picture of it. But it is, I don't even know. Can you even see it?
Yeah, I can see it.
But it's like some see-through. It looks like it's from Chile. So I love the overprint look. There's a overprint sort of the price, and then there's this big red bar. I loved stamps. So I collected stamps since I was, I don't know, third grade, maybe. I mean, I have a lot of stamps. I still love stamps. My mom still gets me stamps.
I was going to find, I have a little Ziploc bag full of stamps. So my dad still goes to a lot of yard sales and auctions. So I still get a ton of records and all kinds of old cameras. I have over 500, 600 antique cameras.
Whoa.
But the funniest is stamps and matchbooks. For some reason, they were just stuck in boxes with all the other things. And then finally, he just looked at me and handed me a box of matchbooks. He's like, "You're collecting matchbooks now." So I have all these matchbooks, and I have this thing of stamps that I need to just send to you.
Oh, yeah.
Where somebody, but Lord knows where they're at. They're somewhere in this house, but it was, I've stumbled upon stamps. The only stamps I really collect now, like I'll get some like when I think Jessica Hish, but I think I use them. Like I kind of want to get them out into the world.
So I do that too. I have some. I probably am not like a real collector, but I'll save. I do have some that I haven't touched. Like I have a Muppets one that came out a few years ago that I really like, and I don't use those. And then I have some Harry Potter ones that I don't use. And but I bought some the other day. Yes. Yeah. Oh, I love. Okay.
There's an Andrew Wyeth collection.
That girl laying down in the field. That whatever, I can't remember what the name of that painting
Christina's
is.
World, because it's hanging up in my living room.
Okay,
right.
I've always loved that painting. So if that was something, and when I've heard about the story of her, I was like, oh my gosh, this makes it. So I love fields. I have an affinity for fields. I love to mow. I get mad when my husband mows. So I have a 0-turn mower. It's like riding a go-kart. and it is the most fun. And I get really mad when he cuts any of the yard. And I really do. He's like, I
I'll
had
do the
to,
dad joke
Diane.
thing of saying, if you ever want to come up here and mow my yard, I hate, because I'm too big. So I have
Wow.
a push mower and I have to like hunch over.
Oh.
I hate it.
So me with a push mower it's literally about here. So we are like it's at my like neck, or it's kind of hard. I mean, I definitely have push mode, but the riding lawnmower where it's a 0 turn, it's the most fun. I mean, we have 4 acres, so I can cut and nobody cares, if I'm tearing up a part of the grass. John's like, you kind of blew out the grass here, Diane. I was like, who cares?
Yeah.
We got a bed frame against a tree.
You beat me to it. I was gonna like, hey, there's still 3 bed frames leaning against it. They're becoming part of the tree at this point. So if you can take
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so field. So Christina's world, because I'm gonna stick on the being a larger human being for a second. So I was in MoMA in New York, and I walked into this smaller room, and there was Christina's world. And I'm not kidding. I walked up to it, and I looked around me. I said, "Y'all all need to leave." and they were like, and I was just sitting there like this with my arms crossed. And I think I said something to the effect of, I didn't stutter. Everyone needs to leave this room right now. And everyone cleared out. And I just stood there and looked at it for like 5 minutes.
Wow.
And I walked and I looked, because it's like raised. Like, it's like, I think it was Pollock that was saying it's almost sculpture, like how he built that up. And I was sitting there trying not to cry. Like, I just had 5 minutes alone in that room because I cleared the room. And I was just like, no, everyone needs to leave. Like, no.
What do you love about that painting?
I think it is, I've never figured out a way to, there's a phrase that I need to figure out how to say. But it's the same thing I get with certain films, to where the ending is very sad, but it's also hopeful. Like have you ever seen the film Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind with Jim Carrey and Kate Winslet?
All right,
it's incredibly sad and hopeful, and anytime I end it, I want to watch it again. And that's what that painting, I think, means to me, is every time I look at it, and it's hanging up in my living room right now, I was like, it is incredibly beautiful and sad, and there's some kind of longing there. That it's just, I don't know. I can't put it into words.
Have you ever seen the movie The Other Side of the Mountain?
No.
Oh my gosh. That I don't even know. It might only be on VHS. Like, I think I had to bootleg buy it on DVD. It is one of my favorites, but it is a tear jerker. Okay. But it's one of those that that same sort of thing. It's really sad, but it's so full of hope that I love that movie.
Yeah.
And it's the way people live. My other favorite, these 2 are my top favorites, is Harold and Maude. Have you ever seen that one?
Yeah.
Now,
it's been a long time. It's been in my queue for a long, because I think I watched it like when I was in college.
Yeah.
So it's been a long time ago. I was like, I need to rewatch that.
I think it came out early 70s, maybe. Yeah. Bud Cort, and I can't remember Maude's name, but
Ruth Gordon.
Yes, Ruth Gordon. That's right. Good job. You win.
I'm a movie nerd, so yeah.
So, but that's another that is a weird kind of movie, and it's so full of like looking at life in a new way, and I just loved her perspective, and so
the 2. Although these 2 both end a lot hopeful, but I think they have moments of it. The 2 films I've seen the most in my life will be odd for someone who looks like me. When Harry Met Sally.
I like that one too.
And Serendipity.
I like that one too. Yeah.
And Serendipity is another one of those that you're almost sad that they finally found one another, because it's just like everything building up to this moment, and they find one another. And it's just so beautiful. And then it's like, oh my God, they did it. They did it. They were able, like, it's every time I end that film, I want to watch it again. So, but yeah, there's something about Christina's world that every time I look at it, It's that.
Mm.
It's every time I know it's a huge painting, but Nighthawks. Every
Oh,
time
yeah.
every time I look at Nighthawks, I can hear an Otis Redding song called
Mm.
Cigarettes and Coffee in my head. And I was like, that's what that is. Those moments when you're somewhere where the world is asleep and it's
Mm.
just you and the person you're with, like it's that's where words cease right there.
Mm-hmm.
Dang.
Yeah.
So okay, so you didn't really see anything as a kid that kind of
Maybe stamp. That's the only thing
the
I can
stamp.
think is the tiny details and that was had type on it. Um, I uh no, I mean I don't know. I was then on the yearbook when I
Yeah.
was in high school and I was the editor. I think I was the editor 1 year for sure, but maybe 2 years. I really liked yearbook, but that was graphic design.
So I was going to say yearbook, and then when you go to college and do graphic design, how much of it is still the old school method by hand, and how much is it computers?
So the first class I had was all by hand.
Okay.
And it was, and I wasn't that great of an illustrator. Like I never would have considered myself an illustrator. They had like an illustration track and then they had a design track. And I just did the design because I didn't think that I had that capability. So I feel like that's something that I've always been trying since I've probably since maybe 2010, 2012. I wanted to work on illustration. So I started drawing more instead of just writing in sketchbooks. I would never show anybody, at that point. But now it's like I put illustrator as a something on I'm a designer, I'm an illustrator. Even though I still feel a little bit like a fraud saying that, I do think I illustrate and I just illustrate my own way and it's not like anybody else and it always feels wrong, but that's what I do and that's okay. So,
I've turned down 2 jobs in the last month because I was like, I don't think what I am able to do is going to match what you want. So here are other people that can do what you want.
yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
because I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to let you down. I was like, this person is a lot better and is a lot more malleable artist than I am. I was like, I do what I do, and I'm not.
Well, and I think that it's good when people see what you do and they're like, no, no, Jody, I want that.
Yeah.
I want that thing. I want how you think. But there's a difference in being able to articulate to someone else and have them execute and then me being able to execute. I love making things with my hands. Like I like tearing apart a box, seeing the extra colors besides the CMYK, right? I like to see those pieces. I like to um see things with collage. There's lots of people who do collage. There's and I'm always like, oh, I'm not doing it like they are,
Yeah.
but I do it a different way. And I I never feel like I would fit, like they wouldn't invite me to their table, but I feel great about what I've made,
Yeah.
and I mean, I can always improve and I'm always trying to improve, but I know that sometimes it's just about making a mess. And went for so many years of being so afraid of making a mess that now I'm having to kind of embrace some of the making a mess and wasting some paper or some
Yeah.
tools or supplies, I think. And that's been something I've been working on for the last summer.
So, like the last 10 years, my biggest thing is trying to get what's in my head to be able to actually do it when I put ink to paper, when I do anything, and the frustration of not being able to get it to turn out exactly how I can see it in my head.
How do you get through that frustration though? Because I'm right there with you. So what do you do to get yourself better? Do you keep looking at the thing and figure out what's wrong, or do you try it again, or do you give up, or what?
There's a lot of dead jobs that I have. There was one idea I had for a while of just taking watercolor, and I still have the paper and everything, and then just doing uh, color swap, just whatever it made, and then taking India ink and actually whatever that looks like and drawing that. But
Oh,
the
yeah.
problem I kept running into was I would do the painting part, the watercolor painting. I was like, okay, this is good. Okay, let me start with the India ink. And then, like, first go, I would screw it up.
Oh.
I'd be like, mother, and I would wad it up and throw it away.
Oh.
Like, never. So there are a lot of dead jobs like that. But
Mm.
then there are other things where it was like, let me figure out something that I know I can make one thing of and make it work. And I was like, I'm really good at flat illustration in Illustrator. What if I bought construction paper and did that? And so I did that for an art show here in town. It was like the book Station 11 had just come out. And it was like, what should exist in art museum, or what should exist in a post-apocalyptic world? And I actually did a 2D construction paper of an art museum. And I faked a Rothko. I actually took paper, red paper, and did an ink wash and made it look like a Rothko. I faked a Piet Mondrian. I was like, because those are things I know I can do and it will be successful. So I found
Mhm.
those little things. And then I got invited to go to Aramont here for this thing called Pentaculum. And I thought it was going to be a lot more of us working together, and it was not. So I had brought some of that construction paper. So essentially, out of the 5 days I was there, like 3 of those days, that's all I did was build little pieces. Like I was like a flame because I can make it go from the dark to the
Yeah.
yellow. So I've got a folder full of pieces, and I was like, some of this looks like a fifth grader did it, and that's fine. That's fine. And I think it's that. I think it's like the drip idea. It's like figuring out something that is in my brain that needs to get out, but it's also not something that it's like I will never be able to succeed with that.
Mm.
Like and maybe that's not good, but I also feel like the drip thing or the paper thing, it's still pushing myself to do something I'm uncomfortable with,
Yeah.
even though it may not be on a level that is so high. It's like, yeah, but I also don't have that time to go from, I can go from 0 to 3, but I don't have the time to get from 3 to 10.
Right. So how have you gotten better at things that you are a 10 at? So what was it, or what is it about that thing that allows you to get to 10? Because you're 10 at lots of things.
Oh, thank you. So what I learned to do over the years, it was like, because I started graphic design at 13
Wow.
in high as a freshman in high school, because we were a vocational school.
Right.
That was only, I've told this story many times. There were only two, and this is why I asked the computer question. There were only two computers in that high school. One of them was in the print shop, one of them was in drafting. And I knew I wanted to work with computers, so I chose the print shop. And that's how I got, but we still did everything by hand. We would print out on a laser printer, then go shoot film,
Yeah.
develop the film, shoot the film into a plate, strip it
Mhm.
up, shoot it into a plate, and put it on the press. But I would get to a certain level in design. I'd be like, okay, I'm pretty good here. Let me pick something because I get bored easily, or ADHD, one of the two. So let me pick up something else. I was like, okay, photography. So then I would learn how to do photography, and then be like, hold on, I need to go back to design because I've fallen behind a little bit. And I kept doing that to where that's how I learned how to do marketing, promotion, photography,
Mhm.
videography. And I feel like everything kind of fits together. I knew that it was, graphic design was never going to be one thing. It was
Right.
all going to adapt over the years. And so I was the funniest thing that, I don't want to pat myself on the back, but in college I was good at math, but not great at English. So
Mm.
I took advanced probability and statistics when I was in high school or in college. And I said to my advisor, because he was like, you're the only person that's ever taken a math class instead of an English class. And he was like, and of course you would. Like, he liked to poke fun at me too, Miss David Gilbert. And but I said, I feel like figuring out how to do the research is going to help me prove why I'm doing is right. And now that's all it is analytics and data. Like I use that in marketing so much. I was like, oh, I figured that crap out in 1998. Like
Yeah.
taking probability and statistics and advanced promotion and all these weird psychology and sociology class. I was a 3-year in an associate's degree program because I took extra classes knowing I would need them later.
Yeah, the sociology is huge because it's about culture and it's about people. That's what we designers should have to take sociology classes.
I was lucky enough. I had a class called sociological problems and change. And it was like not only finding what the issue was, but now how do you change that? And that was an entire semester of that. And we would just talk about the news for like the first 10 minutes. And then we would get into the actual class. It was glorious. It was great.
That's awesome. That sparks for graphic design for sure. Well, so you were in the print shop at 13.
Yep. I had to pass an OSHA test every year to be able to go back into the print shop. Like Mr. Miracle was a beast. Like he had been in the Army for years. He worked in Colorado at NORAD.
Yeah.
In the underground, because he would tell me, he was like, I would drive up, I would park, I would have to walk 1 mile to an elevator that went down, I think 3 miles, and then have to walk to my print shop. So he was printing like very top secret documents.
Yeah, government things. Yeah.
So that's who I had I had him, and then I had Art all 4 years. And Miss Waller and her husband were professors at UT that they then took everything that they taught there and taught at my high school. Even though my high school was rough, and like I took her for all 4 years and she would teach us intaglio printing, screen printing, figure drawing, like all of that stuff. And I was never I'm still not a good hand illustrator. And she was like, you're not as good as other people, but you work really hard and you want to learn all these things. So I was in like Art 6 by the time I graduated. She was like, I'm just inventing programs for you because you need to be like my last semester in school was like Art 6. And then I taught incoming freshmen how to do the print shop. And then I had like graphic arts 8. And then I had like a free period. Then I would go hang out in the print shop all day. I was like, I could probably graduate, but that's all I did. That's all I did. It was wild.
I love that. That's like super into what you were passionate about. So when did you stop playing football? Like what grade?
Football part of the way through my sophomore year. But the ironic part was I was still able to play baseball, basketball, and through shot put. For whatever reason, I didn't have the issues when I did that. And I still don't know. And I even boxed in college and for 10 years after that. Like I played sport. For some reason, it was football that would cause me to have the issues. And like I said, because they said it wasn't something that I should stop, then I would still play the other things. So, yeah.
Well, I always feel like baseball, you're just running to one base, you know? And maybe to catch a ball.
Yeah.
It's not a lot of cardio in baseball.
No, but he would make us run a lot and good. So that was the funny part is also, I think of all the ways I played sports that I was still in that latter time of how rough they were on us in practice. We would start practicing baseball in February when it's 3 degrees outside.
Freezing, yeah.
And we have to run like around like 20 laps or something. It's like,
yeah.
But yeah, oh man, still a bug or two. It got warm here, so now I've got a bug in here.
I killed a mosquito like Mr. Miyagi yesterday.
So did Auburn have like a good graphic design program at that point?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it was good. It was, not in the top 10 probably, but it didn't matter because I was going to Auburn and I was not changing schools based on what I was learning. What? I needed to go to a school that had football, right?
Yeah.
I had my priorities in line there, Jody, right? But it was good. It was a very bulky. I mean, I had a lot of classes. I had great teachers who were working, teachers who were
Yeah.
they weren't just you know, um they weren't just sitting around teaching only. They were actually doing, they were illustrators. It was pretty, there was a heavy illustration bent. um I don't know if you know who Bethany Heck is. She's
I
worked,
recognize that name.
she
Yeah.
does a lot of stuff with typography. She does a lot of stuff that is like she has some old um uh the EFIS League. She decided that how people were recording baseball was weird. And so she made her own kind of way to record baseball. And she took all these old photos from the Library of Congress, and that's what she did. But her dad was one of my professors, and he was typography focused. And so it makes sense that Bethany, who also had her dad and all the people that she grew up with, right? She went to Auburn too. But it makes sense. And so I think it was a great program.
Yeah.
I never had I mean, lots of people would go to Auburn and then they would go because there wasn't anything in Auburn. It was really a college town. And then they would go to Atlanta. And again, it was the same sort of thing. I didn't want to go where everybody was going. So Tara and I, my best friend, we were going to go. She was also in design. We are going to go to Denver or to Phoenix. And she went to Phoenix. She was like, it's too damn hot, Diane. We can't live there. I was like, okay. So then me and her, and then three of my guy friends all moved to Denver. And she got a job right away. Took me 2 weeks to get a job. And I loved Colorado. Like that was being outside. I loved being outside. I love hiking. I could hike every weekend. And it was a great place. From Auburn to there, it was a great place to kind of grow. And I hated to leave it, but I had a job at a magazine. It was a startup, and that was one of my first jobs, and I made awesome friends there. I loved, it was a craft magazine, and they did everything wrong. They had no advertising. They had it was just unheard of that it was successful with no advertising. It was subscriber led. It's kind of like Uppercase Magazine. Have you ever seen that magazine? I'm sure. And anyway, it's a great designy kind of magazine. I'm going to get one to show you really quick.
Okay.
I'm going to get one. Hopefully that's print focused. Well, good enough. It's based out of Canada. Okay. And this girl does everything for it. Janine, I can't remember she has kind of an interesting last name, but they have a whole issue that is so this is one of them. It is again, okay. Also, there's no advertising at all in it, and it's like good for the environment or whatever, but it has all these little things that look like little stickers, when you were a kid, or but there's a print. They have a book, and I don't know if I have that one. I may have it, but it might not be in this bookshelf. I'm like you. I also have a built-in bookshelf, but they have a lot of art, but it's a lot of design, art, illustration, craft, and I love this magazine, and I will get it until I die. It a lot of collage. There's some collage in there as well. That's just kind of anyway, I just really like it. Van Gool, I think is her last name. Janine Van Gool. And anyway, but they did it. She came after the company I worked for, and they were super successful and were actually bought by F&W Publications. And you still see the books that I worked on or the brand at least.
Yeah.
And so it was fun. It was really a team based, I had a great editor, and then we'd work late. I'd stay till 3 in the morning or sometimes 6 in the morning. And then I'd go home, take a shower, I'd eat something, and I'd come right back
Oh,
because
yeah.
we had a deadline. And, but at that point and it was good, but I was just working a lot and I didn't mind that. And then I was snowboarding when I could, and I loved snowboarding. And then it wasn't paid very much, And so then I had gotten an art director, and I felt like I was fine with him. He was good. Um, but then he started I didn't have very many things to design. I was doing a lot of production, and I had one article that I always designed every month, and he took that away from me, and I was like, it's the only thing I was designing. I want to do more than just production, and I could do, but I felt like I think he probably did it because the creative director wasn't letting him do enough, or he didn't like how the relationship was. He wanted to do more, so he was taking, and so him and I didn't get along, which I pretty much can get along with anybody. But I was like, well, I want to do more, so I got a job at a corporate. And so I was working in, if you've ever seen Denver from Skyline, there's a building that looks like a cash register. It's kind of curved at the top, like an old cash register. That's the building I worked in. And I was there for 2 weeks, and my boss came and said, "Are you still looking for a job?" And I've never been fired ever from anything. And I said, "No. Am I not doing am I not do it? Am I, it's something wrong?" And she's like, "No, you're fine. But we just got told that the marketing department is going to be disbanded in the next year." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And so I had always thought, and I had always felt like God wanted me to be a professor. And my sister said, I called my sister and I told her, and she's like, "Well, you've said you were always going to go back to school and get your master's. Why don't you do that?" And I'm like, "Okay, well, I guess that's what I'm going to do." They did not disband the marketing department for another 5 years, I think. And my best friend Tara now works there in the marketing department. And she's worked there for probably 7 years, maybe 8 years. I've had students that have gone and worked for her. So they did disband it for a little bit, but that was what I needed to get out of Denver. So and then I went to
Where did you go
Virginia.
back? Oh,
I went to VCU. No, I went to Virginia Commonwealth University. So I applied at UT. I applied at Louisiana Tech, and I applied at Virginia Commonwealth University. And at the time, those were three good schools for design and a master's program. They all had a good program. And VCU was number one in public school, like RISD. If you added the private schools, RISD was up there, and Cranbrook, or I knew I couldn't afford that. So I was like, nope, I got to go where I can get a full ride. I got a full ride at all of them. And, but VCU was where my textbooks, all of them were written by these people. So I was like, and I asked Professor Heck, I was like, where should I go? And he had gone to UT. So he, of course, he's like, you should go to, he said though, you should go to VCU. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go to VCU. So
man.
I went to VCU, and it was a really good for me. So it was a lot of work. I worked 7 days a week. I was a waitress and a bartender on when I wasn't doing school, because I didn't want to have to do client work and try to learn. I wanted to be able to put my focus, and I'm an extrovert, so I had never waited tables, but I figured I could do it. And I loved it. That was like, if ever things don't work out for me, I can always go back to being a waitress or bartending at Outback. That's where I can go.
So when I early on in doing Feral John, I got my bartender's license, and I've got one because I was like, you know what? I'm going to be working by myself. There's so many breweries around here. I can pull beer. I can do that. And I learned later they don't hire people to, again, it's the same thing of like, you have to have previously been a bartender. I was like, to pull beer? Come on, man. Like, that's so dumb. Like, But now I've worked like events and stuff, helped out like Big Brothers Big Sisters.
Yeah.
I was a celebrity bartender. I was like, you are stretching what celebrity means. I was like, are you trying to, like, I've recently started joking. When I go to UT games, I'll always be stopped by some drunk older dude and he'd be like, where'd you play football? And I'm like, I'm gonna start telling people I played for the Toronto Argonauts or some CFL team to go, to just make a joke out of it, of like, oh yeah, I played for the Argonauts and from 2000 to 2006, and just start making up things because I'm so tired of
Oh yeah, I know. I'm sure there.
people bugging me about. But it, like, I got that bartender, and again, I hate bragging or whatever.
No, you're just telling your story. You're not bragging.
But I can't tell you how many people have said you would be a great bartender.
I agree. I think so. But I think it takes the talking to people,
Yeah.
and that's what you should have. I mean, I don't,
Yeah.
I don't. But if anybody had sat with you,
Yeah.
they would know you would have been a great bartender. I mean,
maybe still, I may still do. Like, I helped my friend Adam, his wife Amy, and their friend Chad, our friend Chad, have a coffee cart. And I go anytime he just needs help, I will go do it. Like, we worked the night before the UT Florida game. This title company here in town had a big like bash the night before, and it was like 2,000 people. And I helped him work the coffee cart because he knows I can just talk to people,
yes,
and do all the topping stuff, and make jokes or whatever. And it's hilarious because during the pandemic, a lot of PTAs would raise funds, and we would go in to schools and give all of the teachers coffee. So, and it was great, like being in cafeterias and there are all these kids and they're all just staring, like, how y'all doing down there? Just messing with them. It was so, and then the bigger kids would come up and they'd be like, who are you? I was like,
yeah,
go on, kid. Like, just messing with them. But
that is
anyway, so what does a master's program look like for graphic design? Because I've got friends who have done masters in art, but design seems like it would be different.
Well, it probably isn't. So from where I went to school, I mean, it's different at every school. So I was only studying with designers. There were 17 of us. So it was 10 in my year, or 7 in my year and 10 in the year before me. And so it was just a 2-year program. But you're doing design, they're giving you prompts, or you're reading something, and then you have to create something, and it was all more conceptual, and so I was more practical, so they had to break me from, I'm like, no, this wouldn't be printed, you couldn't print this, and they would be like, we don't want that. Do you want to pass? You need to be conceptual. I mean, they didn't say that, but pretty much it wasn't maybe as much as like Yale conceptual.
Yeah.
But I remember we did at this point I had embraced kind of like, oh, I'm gonna do this, and I think some people were still being broken, and I always think I'm doing it wrong, and so I did think that I was like, it was totally God that I got this assistantship. They gave it to one, and there were like 100 of people who applied for it, and I absolutely did not deserve it. But I was so thankful that I got it, because I wouldn't have been able to go. And but only one person out of these 7 got it, and there were hundreds of people that applied, they said. And I was like, oops, you have made a mistake, but I'm gonna take it, and I'm gonna do the best job I can. I ran a print shop. I could do that. I could, do stuff with computers and help, run labs, fix things. Absolutely, I can do that. But I remember there was this one project, and they wanted us to get people to ride the bus. So that was the prompt. And they said, we want you to design, maybe it was 4 buses. And there were city buses of Richmond, Virginia. And this is like before bus wraps per se. This is like really the beginning of bus wraps, maybe. And I decided that I thought it would be really fun to do flowers. I would be like, I'm going to ride the sunflower bus. And then you take the daisy bus. And then, like I thought that would be really fun. And so I just did a solid color. And then I just made clipping paths of some flowers that I had taken. And then I just kind of patterned it all up. Everybody was going. So we all had to present on Mondays. And they were presenting, and I remember specifically there wasn't a spot at the table for me because there were so many people. I had to sit on the stairs, and I was like, oh my gosh, I did this wrong. If they just everybody could go, or and then I can do it. I can present tomorrow, Tuesday or Wednesday or whatever, when we have this class again. And then I'll fix everything. Cause I was like, oh my gosh, they're all doing like these campaigns, like to really like save money, whatever, everything that we would have done in a real job, they wouldn't have freaking put a sunflower on a bus. Anyway, my teacher called me and I was like, oh man, I could not get small enough, like, oh, and I was like, well, I think I might have done it incorrectly. So if somebody else wants to go, and he was so hard. I love him for this. It was John Malinowski. And he was like, no, go. And I was like, gulp. I'm like, okay, again, I did it wrong. And I said, I decided to put flowers. I just thought flowers. I thought I just was doing, I stupid now. I realize, but this is what I just thought. And he was like, this is what we wanted. I mean, probably not exactly, but he wanted some. And I was like, what? And I remember he would say, or other professors would say, well, do you know blah, 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 like this person? And I was like, I don't know. I went to school in Alabama. Maybe we didn't have the same kind of books y'all had. I don't know. I don't know who you're talking about. And they would be like, does everybody know who that is? And I was like, not me. I don't. I guess I'm the only dumbass in this classroom, but no. And I was like, yeah, well, I'm going to be paying for some of this later on because they don't cover your fees or whatever. Right. But they covered all my, I got my tuition covered, but I still had to pay for living. And so I borrowed money for my master's program. And so I was like, I'm paying for this sort of. And I'm like, I'm going to get my money's worth. Like when they said, do you know blah, blah. And I was like, I don't. Could you tell me who it is? My teacher later, he said, Diane, I will miss you because you raised your hand and no one else did. And we know they didn't know who these people were, but they weren't willing to say they didn't know. And I will miss you because you just brought that fun of learning. And it was like, it wasn't about an ego. And I was like, Lord knows it wasn't about an ego. I had a lot to grow. I was like, teach me, people.
Yeah.
But I think that was like the bus thing was a real turning point, that maybe I had done it right. Like just trusting my gut, instead of just going back to just trying to solve it for the bus company, So I don't remember why I was telling you that. I'm sorry.
No, what's funny? I had the exact opposite happen to me. Mr. Gilbert, we're sitting in Photoshop class, and there were two things about that. It was called digital photography, but it was like you would take photos and then we would learn Photoshop.
Right.
And for the first class, he came in there and he's like, all right, we're doing this and this and this. And like 10 minutes in, he was like, all right, no rules, play. He's like, you're going to learn more playing than I can ever teach you.
Agree.
Well, for the first week or two, we did that. And then later on, we had to do something. It was like, okay, I want you to take a photo and then change 10 things on this photo. And that was the assignment. And it was back in the day. So we would walk there was only 8 of us, 10 of us in that room. So we would walk from computer to computer to computer. I was one of the last ones. And the same thing as you. I'm walking around and it's like, I've turned this person purple and I've put a second one beside them. And I've made the tree look like a cartoon, all this stuff. And he's like, okay. And then he gets to mine. And mine was, I had taken a point and shoot camera and I was driving home and I took a photo on the interstate with these overpasses and an entrance ramp. And I had changed like the color of the car from blue to red. I had greened up the trees. I had added graffiti on the side of the overpass said Bubba loves Babetta. And I changed all these little things, and you had to put up the original and the modified one. I'd made the sky actually like blue and added some clouds at the top. I'd found some clouds and photoshopped them in. And people were behind me, and before he got to say anything, the people were looking at it. I was like, well, and they were like, you didn't do anything. Everything is exactly the same. You didn't touch this. Why is there no change? And Mr. Gilbert said, no, he did what you're going to be doing in this field. You're going to do these minimal changes that no one would notice other than you. I was like,
Wow.
he did this right because he did this the correct way, and just went off on everybody else. I was like, yeah, I changed that color of that card from blue to red, and I deleted a car. You know, I
yeah with the
greened up. I was like, I did, and he was like, no, this is the practical way of working. He's like, all this other stuff you all did, like adding stripes to somebody's arms, you're never going to do anything like that. This is what you're going to do. And he was like, and I was in that moment, I went from feeling like you're talking about, like super small, and just being like, crap, I screwed this up. I didn't go hard enough in the paint, to him going, nope, this is where it's at. And I was like, oh my God, okay. I feel a little better now.
Yeah.
So I had the opposite. I went practical and got praised for being practical.
Well, I think that I probably praise kids for being more practical now than, because I want them to get a job.
Yeah.
I gave them a project. I always change things up, especially when somebody has to repeat the class. I don't want them to have the same project, that seems like a waste for them. I mean, it's harder for me, but anyway, so I did this thing called DIY. So I was like, I'm sure there's things in your portfolio, or there's things that you would have liked to have spent time on. You have 12 weeks. You can, or maybe it was 14. Maybe it's 13 weeks. You could do 15 projects max, or you could do 6 projects, like one every 2 weeks, right? So it's teaching them hopefully about time management, but it's stuff you maybe always wanted to do, but you haven't gotten to do, right? Like you always wanted to do a skateboard deck, but no teacher ever gave you skateboard decks to do. So you're going to do, that's what you wanted to do. So I come in and they say, oh, I want to do this. I'm like, okay, who's the client? Who's paying you to do this? Because they have to know there has to be a skateboard deck company that needs a designer and a series, right? So I didn't want them to just do a one-off. They have to have at least 3 if they're doing something like that. But they could have done a menu. They could have done a logo. They could, whatever. And they can't redo a project. That was the only other thing. And it has been like a bust. It has been really hard. And I thought it would be self-motivation, like as a project. Ideally, it's like, you know what? I love design.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, well, maybe it was just too much for these seniors to think about, or we've just given it to them each time so that maybe they just don't look at enough design, and they're not like, oh man, I wish I could do this. I mean, I think some of them have done things, but some of them have chosen things that were just, I think they chose them because they were easy, and they could get them done in an hour.
There's a phrase, I'm trying to remember what it's called. Shoot.
Boogers? Shoot boogers? I'm just kidding.
Obviously.
Yeah.
The disability of choice or something.
Oh, yeah.
Or the stunting of choice. Like when sometimes you need bumpers.
Yes,
sometimes,
I agree.
Like, what was it? Anytime somebody gives me things I can't do, it makes me figure out what I need to do.
Right. It is. The constraints are really important.
Yeah.
For success. Absolutely.
But there's some kind of disability. It's not disability, but it's something like that. It's like you just stop. Like you don't know how to go forward because you can do anything.
Right. I totally get that. I guess I was just,
you'd hope they would get past that.
Well, I just see things in other people's portfolios, and like, I may not be giving them something that they can utilize their best skill in. And some kids have done fine with it, but some kids have been like, Oh, when I asked well, who would pay you to do this? And they were like, well, I thought this was just something fun we wanted to design. I said, yes, but you still have to go to an interview with this. Do you want this in your portfolio? And I want it to be something that they can use. And so I've had to come and say, like, one girl wanted to do a flash sheet for like tattoos. And I was like, okay, well, it was like all about the number 13, like Friday the 13th or whatever. And I was like, okay. Um, showed what a normal flash tattoo sheet would be, which I'm sure is produced by a company, right? But she was like, well, I don't want to do real tattoos. I'll just do like, fake ones that you just water, whatever, those rub on tattoos or something. And I was like, well, okay, well, what company is going to pay you to do this? And she's like, Hot Topic. I was like, great, find Hot Topic, put it on the front, and say this, that you're doing 11 or 13 illustrations, 7 illustrations. I can't remember what she's doing. And I was like, great. Then now you could, if they like this, if somebody now they see that you can design or you can illustrate in this style, perfect. Because now you just have to make it credible in a way, right? But some of them have just chosen things that I'm like, I think it's just because they thought it was fast. I don't think they always wanted to design a coaster. I think they were like, I can get this done. I've waited. Worked on my other classes and now not this. And so I'm like, oh, how do I? And I had a friend who was like, Diane, is that really are you supposed to teach them about time management? And I was like, well, I do. I end up, teaching them about time management. But you're right. It's not when I just hate to see somebody drowning.
Yeah.
And when I can teach them how to swim,
Yeah.
I don't want kids to have to repeat my class, like, I don't know, that's been hard this semester, but I feel like I just keep trying, and I'll try something else. But I don't know if they just hate me or they just hate the being in school. It's different. Like, I feel like we get to do stuff. Like, that's what I felt like. I get to design and I liked the problem, kind of like you were talking about how
Yeah.
they would give you a problem and then you had to solve it, like sociology. And it was like, I give them a problem. And to me, it's like, now I'm just pulling in, I'm wisdom from me working with clients and me doing these things. Um, and then I felt like this probably the last 7 years. It's felt like high school is just extended now. And they're just kind of, not every kid, absolutely, but there's a few in every class that are really loud, making me feel like that it's just like I'm just a high school teacher. And I had a kid this semester tell me, I have to leave at 5. Class ends at 5:30. I have a rule. If you miss 30 minutes of my class, I mean, if you just leave 30 minutes early all week, Jody, like, if you have a job or you have a kid who's working for you and they leave 30 minutes early, like, you're docked your pay. And they're like, why in my paycheck? Because you freaking left. And if you keep leaving, you're not going to have a job next week. Right.
Right.
And I mean, at least that's how it was for me or for, anyway. And so I had a kid who said that. He's like, I got to leave at 5. I have to make it to an appointment at 5:30. And I was like, we have class, I said, well, you're lucked out. I'm going to let you guys go early today, but just so you know, you shouldn't schedule an appointment because if ever you miss 30 minutes, you're just considered absent. It doesn't matter if the 30 minutes is at the front or at the end.
Yeah.
You don't tell me you have another appointment. If it's a doctor's appointment, I even have in my syllabus, like, don't do a wellness visit, like going to the gynecologist or going to the dentist or going to the, eye doctor, unless it's an emergency during class. I don't care if it's my class or anybody else's class.
Yeah.
You paid for this movie. You should come to the movie.
Yeah. Yeah. And you see that's been I don't know. I wonder how much of that stems from, now it seems like high schools are just a one-track mind. We're just prepping these kids to go to college without letting them be creative or take classes like we took. And I don't know, like bands getting thrown out, arts being thrown out. vocations getting thrown out, all of that, to where it's just like you're going to take English, math, and science, and that's all you're going to do. To
Right.
where, yeah, I wonder if that's, I don't know, part of it.
Maybe it's just like I guess you could, there were coaches when
Right.
you were in football or baseball or whatever, they pushed you and they can tell when you were about to break, usually, right? And that's how it felt like for me with art. Some of my teachers would definitely push me. And I'm glad. I'm glad I pushed. I'm glad I rubbed up against that and I got a little gritty. Um, because it made me be better. If they just were like, great job, Jody. Awesome. I'm so glad you did one push up today. Don't even worry about it anymore. You're good. You did one. Oh my gosh. Let's give Jody a trophy.
Although
Right?
I got one for you. So freshman year, my math teacher, I think it was Algebra 1, Mr. Baldwin. Mr. Baldwin was a former linebacker for the Bears. Big, 6'3", big, still jacked and ripped, still worked out every day. He was a former bodyguard for Martin Luther King Jr. And he got on to me and he was like, "Can you do 50 push-ups or 100 push-ups?" And I was like, I don't think so. He's like, "Anybody who plays football should be able to do 100 push-ups." He's like, "If you do 100 push-ups, you don't have to do any work and I'll give you a B in this class." And so I got down there and started doing push-ups and I made it to like 45 and my arms gave out. And he was just on me. He was like, "You're never going to make it as a football player." I was like, "God, I'm 13. I'm just trying to make it." And then one time I fell asleep in his class and he threw a piece of chalk and it went in my mouth. That's what I was doing in high school. So to hear this of kids, but I think, I don't know. I go back and talk to my old high school, their design. They have two design programs. It's like a design, a print, and a web. And they don't do vocational anymore, but they do that. And they still have radio broadcasting. I don't think that they may still have auto mechanics. I don't know, but I've gone back and talked to those kids and just to see their eyes glazing over. And I always say, I get that I'm the big goofy white dude in here, and you think I just lucked my way into everything. I was like, I came from here. I was like,
Yeah.
I can tell you about fights. I can tell you about cops that were up here every day. I saw a gun on my first day in school. Like, it was brutal. I was like, so I know what you're looking at. You think I'm just some goofy, big goofy white dude, and that's fine. I was like, but let me tell you, if you really want to do art, you can make a living in art. And here's where I came from and how I made that way. And you may never see that, but you can do it if you really want. Like, I really try to encourage. There are kids here that live in the projects that have never been to downtown Knoxville. I start
Mm.
mentioning Market Square, and they're like, "I've never been there." And I was like, "All right." I was like, "It costs you nothing to go anywhere. If you can figure out a way to get there and just walk around, you don't have to buy anything, you don't have to get food, you don't have to do anything. Just get outside of where you live right now." I was like, I
Mhm.
know that seems huge, but you just got to do it. You got to do it. You can be better than just working at Taco Bell the rest of your life. I was like, there's nothing wrong with that. This is pre-pandemic when Taco Bell was paying $7 an hour. Now they're paying a lot more. It's like, maybe I shouldn't have been a designer. Maybe I should be still working at Taco Bell. But I always tell those kids, I was like, you can make it. Like, and I, same thing. I think there's a lot of people who don't tell those kids they can make it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of those teachers that it's because of how the system is set up, they're just pushing them to get them out of school. And it's just like, you don't have to just get out of school, man. It's like you can do whatever you want in your life. Like, you can make it. If you want it hard enough, you can make it. And
Yeah.
the struggle I've gotten into, because I've done portfolio reviews like at UT, and Pellissippi is where I went to school. It's a community college, a technical community college. That's where I graduated from. Pellissippi, one of the best programs for graphic design. Uh, Used to be when Mr. Gilbert was there. to where there were people around town that were like, every time I would get a stack of resumes from UT and Pellissippi, I would throw away the UT ones because the Pellissippi kids had to work for it. They had to
Mhm.
work for it and had a job and all this stuff. But anytime I've gone to the last portfolio review I did at UT, there was only one young woman that I thought was worth a damn.
Mm.
And she went to my high school. And I looked at her and was like, I know you had to work your butt off to get here because
Mhm.
you don't have parents that can afford this school. And she's like, I do not. I was like, that means you had to work really hard. That's why your portfolio looks like this. Whereas another kid had gone to like Home Depot and bought the letters and numbers that you would put on a mailbox and tacked them up to a, a, a light pole. And it said like, a mass wash. And I was like, what does that mean? And he was like, well, it's my art. I was like, you need to be an artist. You need to get out of the graphic design
Right.
career. You need to be an artist. I was like, you've not had, and I actually did my dad finger like, that's what my dad used to do, point the finger. And I was like, you've not had enough adversity in your life. You
Mm.
need to be an artist. You need to figure out a way on how to make being an artist work and get out of graphic design because you've not had enough pushback. So that's what I wonder with a lot of college kids now is like, you've not had enough pushback in your life. Whereas this young woman from Fulton, if it were a betting thing where I could bet on who was going to succeed in this program, I would put all my money on her because she's awesome and she works for it and you can see it in her work. You need to be an artist, make money as artist. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I would applaud you. If you do good work, I'll buy your work. I was like, but you don't need to be a graphic designer. You don't need to
Yeah.
be a graphic designer.
Well, I think graphic design is so much, it is hard, but it's about pleasing someone else, not pleasing you. It's about empathy. And when kids are like transfer in from nursing, I'm like, ooh, you're going to be a good designer
Yeah.
because you understand, or usually because they are trying to do something to help someone. And when I hear someone, why I always ask them the first day of class, I say, why did you choose graphic design? And when they say, well, I did it because it was the only way I could make art and still make a living. And I'm like, oh, it's not gonna work for you, buddy. Because you're gonna feel like a sellout because that's like somebody. I remember a kid I was a lifeguard in college, and he said, yeah, I'm studying accounting. I'm going to do it till I'm 40, and then I'm going to do what I want to do. And I'm like, dude, man, I'm excited about doing what I want to do from day one,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
maybe I don't make as much as you accounting, but I'll be happy the entire time, you
So
know?
what you said about the nursing thing that made me remember, like at Pellissippi, I was the youngest person in my graduating class. And the graduating class before me and after me, there was only one other person that was my age. Everybody else was older, had come back
Mhm.
to school, or they had flunked out at UT and come back to there. Even one of my buddies, he went to UT for design the first 2 years, and he said the program there was very much about who you knew, what
Mm.
kind of brown nosing you did, where they didn't even review his portfolio. They just wrote on the back of the sheet, we feel like your efforts would be better served at another school. And he
Oh,
framed that and put that on his desk when he was an art director at a print shop. Whereas another buddy of ours, bless his heart, is like runs a call center,
mm.
and then he got a degree from UT. So, like, I think it was also that I was surrounded by people who chose to work at doing.
Well, it's that adversity. I do believe that adversity makes a difference. And if you don't let it get you, if you don't let it define you, then it will define you because you don't let something stop you and you're resourceful and people are there to help. There's tons of people that are there to help. I just I don't want to pass somebody to get them out of my class.
Yeah,
I want them to feel like they earned it and they deserve it. And because nobody's asking what your GPA is when you're getting a job, nobody's ever asked me in all my years. No clients ever asked. They can tell by my work, or that's how. And it's like I guess I want them to care. And it's not like there are definitely kids who care. I would say if it's a class of 20, maybe it's 10% or maybe 15, maybe 20 are the kind of yucky kids that are like, but it feels loud because they can be some of the loudest ones. And it was like, so a friend of mine was telling me about her daughter who's 12 and or 13. And she is dating this, or whatever, dating, I don't know what you call it at 13, but this boy likes her and they were going roller skating, and his friends were telling her that she wasn't good enough for him. And I just kept thinking, I was like, that is rough. Like this kid is awesome. Like I talked to this kid on Zoom. Like I love this kid. This kid is great. I
Yeah.
can't imagine why. And then I thought, oh, I thought about it later because it stuck with me. Like her mom told me this yesterday. And I'm like, oh, they don't want to lose their friend.
No.
And so they're just eating at her because she's the outsider. And they're saying anything they think that will deter. They're telling him that. They're telling her that.
Yeah.
That's just plain mean.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So
Sorry.
no, I'm gonna go into have you found some key to help encouraging like kids or anybody in their creativity? Because we're gonna get into you talking to people.
So I think one of the things that's done best is when I show how I'm growing and I bring in and say, hey, this is what I did and it sucked, but then I kept at it, and then here's how I am. And I tell them what's wrong with it. Or I show them things that are inspiring me and I ask them what's inspiring them. Like, and I think that is what I used to do more. I would get excited and I would show. And now I think some of that maybe excitement isn't there because it's not, I'm feeling the heaviness of their heaviness and them not wanting to be here. And I know it's not my responsibility to motivate them or to get them excited, but I love graphic design.
Yeah.
So it excites me.
Okay. So part of your side gig is talking to people who are creatives and getting them to, I don't know, encourage or embrace that more. So what made you start on that path?
So, you mean like with my podcast?
Yeah.
So I just wanted to learn more. I had an opportunity in 2011 to apply to work at Auburn, and they didn't even call me back. Didn't even give me a letter. No, thank you, nothing. And I was like, and I know some people would have been bitter, but I was like, no, I want them to be proud of me. I know that seems so weird, but I was like, wasn't mad at Auburn. I was like, oh, must be me, like I could be better. And I could be better because I was kind of I was in a vacuum. I was working for clients. As a professor, I have to have clients and I have to win awards every year. To get tenure. You have to apply for awards just like a regular design firm, except a regular design firm doesn't make you enter awards. But we have to enter awards and I have to have real client pieces to do it. Or I guess you could do self-promo stuff, but then you have to print it and stuff like that. And sometimes that's expensive. And so I was like, well, I'm just going to I'm going to try to do really good client work and then enter that. And the only reason I have like over probably 30 now, international or national design awards is because I have to enter these things to have a course release and I don't really believe in awards I don't think that that's the only judge, but it is a judge of your design skills. And so that we have to have clients, I think is a testament of our design skills too, that somebody chose us and they paid us $8,000 to do something or $15,000 or $2,000, right? No matter what, they're still paying us something. That's a judge of it. But so I was like, okay, well, I have the clients. I'm just not growing. And I live so far out. So I live in the boonies. I almost live in Mississippi. I think I was 3 minutes from Mississippi. So, but it takes me about 30 minutes to get to the university. And so I was like, okay, well, I don't want to go an extra 45 minutes to get downtown. Not that there's a ton in Mobile anyway, but there was a couple groups that would meet. And I was like, well, I'm just going to start meeting with some people and talking to them and asking them about their process and their design. And I'm going to start learning, but I didn't want to do it alone. I wanted to invite people to come along and do it with me because I was like, well, if it's helping me, then I bet it could help somebody else. And it's free, right? I wanted people to be able to come live. So that was like always, my podcast has always been like a webinar. It's live every Wednesday, most of the time, unless I have a special guest and they can't do it at that exact time, but it's 1:30 Central Time. And so that was the thing. So I was just learning it. So I was asking people, I learned about all kinds of things. And now I've used those with clients. I have won awards based on those things, but I've also just, so to me, it was just selfish. I needed to learn because I didn't want Auburn ever to be embarrassed of me. And now Auburn has a position open. I don't know if I'll apply because I'm like, oh man, I'd have to redo my resume.
Oh my God. When I applied for this job, I was like, I have to fix my resume.
Oh yeah.
It's like, oh God. And I even brought my portfolio and I was just like, I haven't touched this in like 6, 7, 8 years. So maybe just look at my website. And then I brought my computer so I could pull up my website to show more current work.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would have to do a lot of stuff on there, but anyway, but it became less I wasn't trying. I just wanted them to be proud of me. I think they're proud of me. But that was kind of what started it. And now I realize that really what the problem was and what I do, I run a group, and what I do is take people who are like me, these lonely onlys. We are doing it alone. And I was worried I wasn't doing it right. Or maybe somebody else knew something I didn't know. And it could take me a ton of time to try to research and learn or do a course.
Right.
But maybe if we all kind of group thinked it together, we could use our strategizing minds and our creative thinking and brainstorm together. And that's what we do. And so one thing kind of led to another. And it's just a place where I can see ideas coming together and people get excited. And for me, if I'm running the group, then it's more about just like me reflecting back and being like, oh my gosh, no, you're awesome. Have you not seen this stuff that you did last week? Yeah. Like, this is incredible because you're alone. Nobody else is kind of like seeing that day to day, or seeing how you're growing. And so then if you're in a group of 9 people or 12 people, then they're all seeing it. And I could say it and they might be like, oh, well, Diane's just being nice. No, I'm telling you. And I think that there's something there. And I think there's such power of that in a classroom. Yeah. But there's also such a power of that in a group after we've already out of school. We've been out of school. We're working. We still are that little kid that would be like, is there something here? Like the art thing that you're going to do. It's like, I have an idea. And sometimes people will take it like from there, Jody, they'll be like, whatever, Jody, everything you do is awesome. If you have an idea, you don't even have to explain it to me. But to have somebody like in the thing that you built, the modern art museum, after the apocalypse or something, there's something in that somebody saw, and they saw you and they saw, oh my gosh, you made me think different, or, oh my gosh. And it does something to us. But if we're just in a vacuum and we're only talking to clients who don't understand, maybe they understand the value of design, but they don't understand what good and bad is. It's different when you're among people who do and who can push you. And that to me is powerful. So it wasn't like a day one, I did this and then I did this, but over time, it took me about 7 years to start a group. And I thought I was failing the whole time. The first summer I was doing it, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm failing face forward I was like, I'm driving the short bus. I'm not just riding on it. I am driving it. And, because I just felt like we always do like that. but now I'm more comfortable with doing things new. And I was talking to my friend Melinda, and I know I'm on a tangent, but
No.
it kind of relates. We were talking about um, being as creatives, we are the innovators, we are the explorers. And so we should fail. We should go down a trail and, oh, there's a cliff. We can't go further. We're going to have to trek back and go up. But that's what's fun to us.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Do you all have Pachakacha down there?
Uh-huh. I think so. Yes.
The last Pachakacha speech I gave was called Failure is Success Training. And all it was about failing. And at the end, I was like, this project that I'm working on may never happen. And that's fine. I have to deal with that. It doesn't matter what anybody, and I talked about, there was this MMA fighter, Chael Sonnen, where he said, shoot, now I can't pull the phrase. He essentially said I remain undefeated. And even after he would lose an MMA fight, he would say, no, I remain undefeated. And I love that. Like, I think it's hilarious, but I think it's also just like, that's what I was like, I will take 99 losses and one win, because I'm going to learn more in those 99 losses than I am in that one win.
Yeah.
And it was wild. It was wild. It was wild.
Well, and there's a study that says it was in a book I read a couple summers ago. And I know people talk about this study all the time, and it was a ceramics professor, and he had two classes, and he said, one, at the end, you will be graded on the one perfect bowl. And then the other class, he says, you're going to be graded on how many bowls you make. And then at the end, he pulled up the people who did one bowl and the people who'd had hundreds.
Yeah.
And the people who had hundreds had made so many that they had a much better bowl than the person who was just trying to perfect the one. Yeah. And there's something to that. And that is, I think, what my thought was with the DIY, like design it yourself. There's an Ellen Lupton book that is titled that. And it's kind of where I pulled the project from, was that I just wanted them to be making.
Yeah.
But what I realized is they get in their head so much, or we as designers, as entrepreneurs, as anybody who's making something, we get in our head too much and we stop. But then I think about somebody at a piano or at any instrument. They practice, and they are told if they practice daily, they will get better. Even if it's just the same song,
right,
they will get better. And I don't feel like that's the same way. I don't think we believe that in our industry, but it is the same. The more you do, even the same thing, you will get better, faster, and then you'll get bored and you'll want to play a new song. And that's what I wish they would have taken, but maybe I'm just not good at guiding and they didn't get that. But maybe I'll try it again. But that was what I was hoping, that they would just be busy making.
Yeah. Here's now my turn to fuss at you. You didn't fail at that. You figured out a way it didn't work. So the next, you're going to do it again, and it will work. It may not 100% work. It'll work a little bit better. And you're going to be doing it.
I've thought about ways. I'm like, okay, well, they're going to have to show me something. They're going to have it finished in 2 weeks. One thing done in 2 weeks. Because I think some of it is the decision making. Yeah. It's like, oh, I don't know. Should I do this or this? Oh, I have to do this or that. And I think sometimes when you don't have time to make a decision, when you've made the decision and you just go, it becomes much better than you standing in the grocery store being like, oh, what are we going to have?
Yeah.
You know, I don't care. Just give me some hot dogs. Please.
Can I throw out one idea for you?
Please.
Because you're great at interviewing. So it feels like the easy answer would be create like 5 questions, like what would you do most in your life if money was not an option? Mm-hmm. And do those, and then like, okay, you would home make beer. Well, then do a line of beer.
Yeah,
a line of pack. Like it's almost like what's it called, the decision tree.
Yes,
like
yes.
Down to that, so that not putting my thumb on it, but just,
I like that.
You're taking something you're really good at over here, of like the interviewing, and then applying it to that. then you make the choice a lot easier to them. And that may actually start them to think, okay, well, for the next thing, I really like climbing. So what kind of climbing gear can I design? What?
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. Yeah. I think I can still salvage some of it. And I think I will do that tomorrow in class.
Really want to make a GIF out of me doing this because it was just all frantic motion. You're going to do it, and you're going to succeed, and you're going to.
You should, and then send it to me every 3 weeks to remind me I can do it. I can do it, or Jody's gonna come get me.
So you teach, you do all of the things when it comes to creativity. Do you ever do like self work, like self artwork, or anything just for you?
So I took off this summer. I mean, I worked. I do a lot of web work for clients. I get really excited and I just love helping. I helped a plumber this summer and it is an awesome plumbing website. And I did one for an old client who I do their website and it was time to update. And so it'd been like 5 years, I think. And so we were doing a new website and it was really cool. And I did a whole bunch of new stuff that now makes it easier for them. And then I did another website. I did 3 websites and 4 print pieces. And so it was a lot. It was like from May to middle of July. And then, and in that, I wasn't running a group and I usually do a camp in the summer and I didn't do that. So I purposely didn't do that because I was just getting burned out. So I was doing this, just making art again, making messes, making a lot of ugly stuff and doing a lot of Skillshare classes. Okay. And I mean, I've paid for Skillshare for like 10 years and I finally now am using it. Like I watch like 3 Skillshares a day, probably.
Okay.
And at 1.5 or 2.0, right? Like my husband's like, I have no idea how fast you can hear this. But even stuff. So I have been learning gouache. That's one. Oh. And I've been doing paintings, if you can believe it. And they're little. They're small. I still do little collages and I've been doing so art, like I did drills and I know nobody can see this, but I was doing a Skillshare class and it was just really about like learning your brushes. So it looks like a whole bunch of bricks.
Yeah.
But I think it's really pretty. And then I did stripes and I do little sketches. I'm not really good at abstract. And so I was like, okay, I want to embrace doing abstract. It's really hard. So part of what I'm learning is facing the ugly. So I can totally face it with the client because I know it's not me. It's not a reflection of me. It's a reflection of them. Like that's their choice. If they wanted it purple, I don't think purple. I can tell them why. Or it's somebody on the web, there's a lot of accessibility issues that I will tell them. We are going to rank lower if we do this.
Yeah.
Or somebody yesterday said, well, I don't want the type broken up into 2 columns. And I'm like, okay, I was doing this via text. And I was like, I will explain to you why, because it's about line length and somebody can't read. You don't want them to hold up a piece of paper to the website so that they can actually read the line of type. And so I will tell them that. And that's why I broke it into 2 columns. So it's easier for someone to actually read. And so anyway, so if I do it in all one line, that's on her. That's not on me, right? Like if she chooses that, I don't think of that as a reflection. But what I would do was I don't know what my dog's doing. I might have to let him out. Jack, what are you doing, man? But my client would say, or me in my head, I would say, this painting is a reflection of you. And I had this terrible relationship with my art table, which is over there. And that's, it would reject me for long periods of time. So I wouldn't come back to it. And so then I decided to do something different. And I would start going every time I went to the bathroom, I'd come back and I'd go to the art table and I'd just make a couple marks, do a couple things, max 30 minutes. And then I'd come back over here and I'd do more web design. And that's kind of what I did all summer. And it was really amazing that I was able to take my head out of the sand and to be able to do that. Do you want to see some?
Sure.
I know it's a audio thing. So anyway, so these are some that I did. So you were talking about like making things with watercolor and then making something out of them. So I don't know if I'm doing the same thing that you're talking about, but I do a lot of blobs. And so I do these I call them blobs, and I just make something.
Oh, I don't think I'm an OG or an originator when it comes to that. I think it was just I had it in my head, and then I started noticing more people do that too. So,
No, but you were saying like you would do something with watercolor and then you would put India ink and it would mess it up, right? And so I do a lot of those, and I just am okay even if I mess it up, right?
Like, oh no, I mean, not that I would put the India ink. I would let the watercolor dry, and whatever I would draw, I would screw up a line or something, and that's when I would chuck it. Yeah.
But so I've had to go push through that, even if I've screwed something up, and I've screwed a lot of things up. But like these I did yesterday, and then I put the little dots on this morning. Nice. Like, I don't know. So, but that's just, but see, there's some weird lines. I think this is like a weird woman. Anyway. And then I did, this looks very Auburny, but it's like so it has some gold in it. This is from a Skillshare class. So it's not like I'm, but those are abstracts. I'm not great at abstracts, but this was a field in Tennessee.
Oh, love it.
And that's gouache. And then I kept doing the same field because I wanted to get better. So then a little bit gloomier with some, and then this is the last one, which it has good things and bad things, but I kept learning. And then after that, these are the most recent. These are in September.
Oh, wow.
This was like a field of sunflowers in Italy. So, but I did a lot of things that were tiny because I didn't want to mess things up, like these are tiny little collages.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
But stamps, there's a stamp in those. And then some that were abstracts, some that are abstracts that are absolutely overworked. But again, I'm learning as I go. Some watercolors, and I just use yucky paper. Something was on this one. I was like, well, I'll just try this out. And it has some silver. And then the last two these are again something I had just taken yucky paper and then made something else because it was like, well, it's going in the trash already if I ruin it. So for me, just to spend some time making art, which maybe it's not, art, like people would say. But for me, this was like, it was big, one, to dedicate time to it. And now I realize it helps me in my design. I'm not great with color. So color's always been a hard thing and I can overwork something. But in design, it's really easy.
Yeah.
So you can just Command Z or save as. And so now I don't have a Command Z, so I have to keep working it. And gouache is really forgiving. So gouache is like watercolor, but opaque, and illustrators use it, and you can keep layering it up, which is really nice.
See, I am the opposite. I have been working on this in my illustrators group.
Oh, wow.
Where I was like, I don't know why I keep seeing this pattern. Have you ever seen Close Encounters of the Third Kind?
I think so, but it's one of those that would give me bad dreams. So it'd be like extra weighted blanket kind of time.
There's a point where Richard Dreyfuss is making a mountain out of a thing of mashed potatoes. And at the end, he just goes, this means something. So many of my ideas are, I don't know that this means something in here. It may not mean something to anybody else. It may not go any further than that, but it means something to me. And there's a Kevin Smith movie. You know Kevin Smith?
Mm-hmm.
Clerks and all that. So he did a film years ago called Tusk that was this weird walrus film. And he was like, I am making, it's a terrible,
don't write this one down.
It will give you nightmares. But
okay, never mind.
But it's the story of, he saw essentially Craigslist in the UK where this guy advertised and said, you can live with me for free, but you have to wear a walrus costume anytime I want you to, at moment's notice. And so he took that and he was like, what if that dude was actually demented and sewed the person into the wall? So it's kind of a horror film. But he said when he's telling the story, him and his buddy Scott Mosier are running through the story. At the end, he was like, I want to see this film. I don't care if no one else wants to see this film. I want to see
I
it.
want to.
He's like, so I'm going to go make this film, and it may be terrible, but I want to see this film. And that's all I care about. And I think about that. I think about Kevin Smith, a lot of the things he said. Like he gave this one thing I will give you. He cusses a lot and he's filthy. And I'm going to pre-apologize for that, but that's Kevin
It's
Smith.
okay.
There's a speech he gave that's like 15 minutes long. It says, it costs nothing to encourage an artist.
Mm.
If you look at like Kevin Smith artists, and he's talking about like his father dying, how much it affected him, and how he was like, it costs nothing to encourage somebody. He was like, find the why not people in your life. Don't find the people there when you give them an idea, they're like, why would you do that? Find the why not people. They're like, why not do that? It could be fun. And I think he said, unless you're talking about killing children, then you want to find let's not do that anymore. But I have watched that speech a lot to where I can't do it word for word, but I can pull big.
You're close. I'll have to look it up.
Yeah.
It is. It's really important to encourage people. How are you encouraged?
So the biggest thing I think I struggle with in life, there's a line, and I can't remember who I quoted it from. It was like FDR or somebody, but a friend of mine was like, that's actually from the Bible. And it's comparison is the thief of joy. And that is something that I struggle with all the time, is seeing people get some. I have struggled my entire life with when I hate to keep talking about high school and football and all that, but in high school, the way I grew up, it was because I played football, the smart people thought I was dumb. Because I was in college preparatory classes, the athletes thought I was a nerd. Like I never fit in with anybody except for, there were only two groups that I fit in with. There were three young women in my art class that the three of them accepted me no matter what. And then Black people accepted me no matter what. They didn't care. But everybody else, I've always felt like an outsider in whatever group I'm in. And even now, I actually had a podcast in the last 10 with this guy, Josh Shorey, where I talked about that. I was like, in my own city, I'm not taken seriously as an artist, which is kind of heartbreaking and it's debilitating. And I see people that are awful getting opportunities and examples. So it's, my buddy Adam Kennedy was like, unfollow, unfriend. Do it for your own mental health. You have to do that. That's the only way you're going to be okay. He was like, you have to unfollow. It feels so much better. He's like, I'm on that side. It feels so much better. And so over the years, I've been working harder at doing that, at trying to not put things in front of me. And that's not a adversity thing. That's no, there are people that just have a lot of money and have a safety net and are able to do things that I'm never going to be able to do. And I don't need to see them. I do not need to see
that. That is more discouraging than it is encouraging, right?
So it's what encourages me. I tell you one thing that has felt good is I posted an episode of this where I had somebody on who told their abortion story. Because I think with everything going on in the world, it's bullshit. And what has come out of that is a few friends of mine, female friends of mine, have come out and said, I applaud her because I had an abortion and I still do not feel comfortable talking about that. And nobody knows. And I did it. And I admire her for actually telling her story. And I thank you for giving her that opportunity. And so those are the things that encourage me. Because I say this lovingly. We're two idiots just talking about making art.
Right.
And
Right.
it's like, what are we doing in the grand scheme of things? Like, but it's every once in a while I'll get one that, and every once in a while it's more on podcasting than it is design or marketing, where I'll have somebody text me and say, that was very good. I appreciate you doing that. I was like, oh shit, okay. I'm just some schmuck that's talking to somebody.
But I bet it happens for your design, but it happens to your client. And they don't tell you because what you have made represents them so well that they take that on and they just forget that you might need some encouragement because you're making it. They know that you're making it. I think that there should be those days of, oh my gosh, you made such a difference. Like, I think that it's just really important for people to thank people who have made a difference in their life.
Also, what I've noticed, what makes me different than a lot of other designers here in town is, I don't want to say I make it look easy, but I don't make it look pretentious and I'm going to do 500 versions of this logo to get to your one. I was like, I'm not going to waste that time. I'm going to do it. I'll do a few versions. Those are in the pasteboard. And guess what? If I point at all those, I'll be like, that one sucks. What the hell was I thinking there? You know, all that. But I think I'm so zen about everything to where people don't take it as seriously as it should, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah. So, but it doesn't mean that you don't take it seriously.
No.
It's just that you also understand where it is in the grand scheme of things.
And I'm not, I have no interest in working harder just to be able to charge them more.
Yeah.
That does nothing for me.
Yeah.
But anyway, so what is something you would like to see more of in art or design or in creativity at large?
I would love to see established designers that have been in the industry for 10 years take on a mentor. They don't have to be in the same city, but somebody that they're going to meet with once every 2 weeks.
Oh.
And they commit to doing it for like 6 months. I think they would change.
Yeah.
And I don't care if they're a student. I don't care if it's just an early designer. I actually feel like we need somebody who's been in that 10-year mark. We need somebody. And the more we talk, the more we like I wrote down things that you liked, because now when I hear that, I'm going to be like, oh, I'm going to tell them about Jody, because I think that we're in a vacuum a little too much. And I think it will help the mentor and the mentee, and it will build a relationship that will be unbreakable. And it is over time, over, distance. I just think that if people made that commitment, I think it would change. I mean, I don't think that that's unreasonable. I think I could probably get people to do that and like connect people.
Because there's nothing, there's big brothers, big sisters, the Boys and Girls Club. That's the foundation of those things.
Yeah.
It's just on more of a professional level.
But so many students or young people would be like, well, I don't want to tell them the real thing.
Yeah.
But I think that that's what's holding people back from growth, is they're not willing to show the uglies, like the things that maybe aren't great, but they can't even look at it to see. They don't want to show anybody to say, can you help me improve?
Right.
And I mean, I'm guilty of that too. I told my the painting professor this week, I was like, maybe in a couple of weeks I'll feel ballsy enough to come and show you my gouache paintings, because I know he would help me. He's not going to look at me and be like, good job, Diana, way to go with that one push-up, right? He's going to be like, oh, okay, you ready? And I'll be like, yeah, I'm ready. I want to get better. But I want there to be a safe place for people, I guess, to tell their story, to tell what's really happening, and then for for them to realize that they don't have to have it all together,
Yeah.
that there is a community of people that will help you, and clients are graceful most of the time. I also was really thankful that I had some professors that really were hard, and that they were like, I don't care what's going on in your life. Get it together, get your work done. And I actually am glad, because it prepared me for life,
Yeah.
like, well, I got that stuff done. I mean, I got COVID after I did, literally 4 days after I took a break. And I was like, okay, Lord, I get it. Like, I am now able to rest. Right?
Yeah. Going back to what you said, I had always for years, and I've stopped doing this, but whenever I'd talk to a young designer, I would recommend 2 books to them, or one and partial of a book. And that was The Fountainhead by Anne Rand,
Yeah.
which a lot of people now are taking. I guess they read it a different way than I read it. And then the other one was the first, I think, 100 pages of Great Expectations.
Mm.
And it was the Fountainhead was because the dude, I think it's been warped in its
Sure.
now. But back then, when I read it, I was like, "Oh, this is about a dude who worked really hard to be good at what he is, and when people tried to water that down or screwed it up, he stepped away." And I was like, I've heard this phrase, "be undeniable," and it's
Mm.
like I would talk to kids. I was like, work your butt off to be really good at what you're doing, and when somebody argues with you, if you're right, stand up for yourself and don't be afraid to walk away. That was my takeaway from The Fountainhead. Now, I made mention of that to one too many people, and they're like, "Are you so?" I was like, "No, you're
Right.
taking the wrong part. That's not what I took away from that." But then I was like, "Oh yeah, there are awful things in the book." I was like, "There's murder and all this." I was like, but I think it was in my mind that's not what I took away from it. And the great expectation was exactly what you said. Find someone experienced, because the first 100 pages are all about him wanting to find a mentor to learn how to do something in life. It's like I think we've lost that mentor mentee relation. So that's funny you mentioned that. Like I feel like we've lost that mentor mentee. But I will say, a big thing for me for years, it's not been racism or anything like that. Women's right. It's been a big thing for me is wealth inequality in this world,
Mm.
because I think that is the head of a lot of these issues we run into. And I was trying to mentor a young man. His parents had had him when she was 18, and his dad was like 19 or 20. And he is a really good illustrator, really good designer. He was going to Fulton, my old high school, and he started going to Pellissippi. And at 19, he got a girl pregnant, and he had to give up on that. And now he's working in a manufacturing plant, like
Mm.
his dad, to make do for his family. And at the same time, there was a young woman who was from the rich part of town, who her dad paid for everything. She had this safety net. And I was trying to talk to a female friend about it. And she was like, "The woman's had it harder than the man." I was like, "You're out of your mind. This young man screwed up, and now he'll never get to do what he wants to in life because he doesn't have that safety net." I was like, "It's wealth inequality is the whole thing. He has nothing."
Mm.
And he was one that I was mentoring, but once he had the kid, he was like, "I'm out. I can't do this. I got to make money to provide for my family." And I was like, I think I talked to him. I was like, "You're doing the right thing, but it is sad that you won't be able to do what you're, I think, made to do in this world. Everything you've done up to this point has led to this." And it made me realize how incredibly fortunate I was to be able to, how I made it out of that life I did, and
Mhm.
to be here. Like when I was telling you the story earlier about sitting in Brooklyn in that bar with my
Mhm.
friend,
Reckon.
Reckon. So I'm sitting with her alone at one point, and I looked at her and I was like, "Did you ever imagine we would be here, right now?" And she's like, "No, never in a million years." I was like, "Yeah, we thought we would die or we would be, stuck working at Taco Bell for the rest of our life, because that's the path that a lot of kids that go there are on. Not that that is a bad thing, but it's just, I think if you build up a mentor mentee that mentor has to be strong in their conviction and really encouraging that kid to persevere.
I think sometimes they're just a resource that a
Yeah.
kid doesn't know. That kid didn't know that he could borrow money to go to school, or doesn't know that he could actually draw something faster than he and make $400 than he could work for 40 hours making the same $400.
Yeah.
Right.
But I
Like,
think it's because of he saw his parents
right,
right.
right. Absolutely. But it's then I think it's that mentor, and maybe it's having multiple mentors, like, um, my sister's doing something. She does a lot of stuff with a DEI, and she's doing stuff with, there's lots of people, and it's not just anybody who is a minority. It could be a white kid in the farm, they're a minority in this, in there where they live, right? So it's not about, it doesn't have to do it, just that you are kind of this, alone.
Right.
There's not a lot of people like whoever you were around, right? And so she's trying to say, okay, well, we could teach coding. They could do coding. They could do some data entry. There's things that they could do that would give them a higher salary than if they were just doing Taco Bell, or just doing working in a factory, or working in an auto parts store, whatever, right? There's nothing wrong with those jobs. Absolutely nothing wrong with those. But if they wanted something, so she's teaching entrepreneurship and some of these, like, she's like, Diane, do you think that you could teach them how to update websites? And I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that that's something. And if they knew they were going to get $100 a month from 5 companies,
Yeah.
just to update their website,
Yeah.
I mean, that they would be like, what? It's
Yeah.
going to take me 15 minutes on a Saturday, and maybe sometimes 3 hours to do this. Yeah. I mean, I think, and maybe it's more than 5 websites or whatever, but still, I think that there's something that they can do that I could do, that
Yeah.
if I needed to, but then it's about just getting in front of the right people who need these skills, right? So it's about him knowing that he could make money at a sign shop or at a whatever. That's where I think those connections are really important. It's like, I might know people or resources that he doesn't know. And so then I tell him this, and light bulbs go off, right?
But it's also helping build up his confidence.
Yes.
Where it's like, you don't have to go do that. That is a path to make money now.
Yeah.
Or even if you need to do that for the next year or two, and then work on your own building up that client base.
Right. That's the overlap method. You don't have to quit everything to just do this one thing. I absolutely don't believe in that. I don't believe you should quit your job to go. And if you've never done this thing professionally, I think you have to have enough. You have to have been doing it enough and stop doing the thing that you don't want to do so that you can start doing the thing. But there's a lot of time where these two things are going at the same time. There's that overlap.
Right.
And it's really important.
Yeah.
I see a lot of people fail by that they did it too early, and then they don't have the grit or the thing to go get a job at Home Depot or drive for Domino's while they're doing this other thing, so that they can actually make that thing work. And I mean, I have a friend who, I think one of the best things we can do for confidence, to build confidence, if somebody's like, oh, I don't want to be a mentor, well, then you hire somebody that I've done this, and I think that this is great. So if somebody says you need a t-shirt designed, or you need something designed, you need a specific kind of illustration that, yes, you could do, Jody, it would take you a while. It would be better to pay somebody $100 than to spend 2 or 3 of your hours to do this thing, especially if you don't really want to do it. So you're going to pay this student or a young designer, or even somebody who's just back into the industry, but they need confidence. You're going to pay them what they thought would be $30. You're going to pay them triple that, $90, or you're going to pay them $75. So it is beyond what they would have thought, but it's still cheap for you to pay, right? It's still not totally $30 cheap, but you also don't want to be like fivering anybody. You don't want to be getting them in that. So it's like they see what it's worth. I had somebody who said, oh, okay, this t-shirt design, I'll do it for you for $100, Diane. And I said, well, I can't do that. I said, I'm going to pay you $400 to do this t-shirt design. And he was like, what? And I was like, this is how I haggle. You are not, I need you to send me a bill that says 400, because to me, it was worth that. It was worth that amount. And I had budgeted for that. I know as a business person, maybe that is not the smartest deal, but I am not here to make a ton of money, to just get further on. I'm here. My goal is more kingdom driven, and I'm not just storing up stuff for heaven, but it is way more about getting somebody ready. And if $300 does that, man, when I have extra $300, I'd rather build somebody up, right?
It angers me when I see people not tip well.
Oh,
like,
man, being a server, absolutely.
Like, it costs you $2 more, and you don't know how much that $2 impacts their life. Because if 20 people gave them that much more, it would be that much easier for them. So you haggling down to 14% of a tip, you're a dickhead. Like, don't do that. Like, yeah.
I had somebody when I was working at a barbecue restaurant, right? So it was red, hot, and blue. I don't know if y'all have those in Tennessee. Do y'all have those? Anyway, they were in Virginia, and it was yummy barbecue. And this guy, I wore shorts all the time, even in the winter, because it was hot. I'm running around, I'm getting to my tables, I'm wearing shorts. I only have to get from my car to the door. I'm staying inside all the rest of the time. And so I was, and it was in the winter because it was snowing, and he had left $50 on the table, and he had already paid. And I was like, oh man, he thought that was a $5. He must not have had his glasses on. Yeah. I run with the $50 out to his car, follow him. Yeah. I'm like, sir, you by accident left $50. Yeah. And he's like, no, that's your tip. And I was like, for me?
Yeah.
And he's like, yes, you did a great job. And I was just like, your bill wasn't even $50,
yeah.
But I also had, now being as a server, this is a little bit where I think I'm grateful to just loving people, trying to love people, and not, and just having faith that God would provide. Was I would go and some people are really racist about saying certain people don't tip, right? Yeah. I don't care.
Yeah.
Whenever they said that, I would be like, my dad's that whatever color you were just saying, you can't tell. You cannot tell. I could be adopted. Who knows? If they said it was Asians, if it was African Americans, I would be like, my dad's African American.
Yeah.
And I mean, I could do it with a straight face. And I was like, they would be like, oh man, I'm so sorry. And it really pisses me off. Right. Like, and I'm, anyway, I don't look at what each person tipped. Now that one guy I did, because I thought he made a mistake.
Yeah.
But otherwise I just put it in my bag, and I didn't log it as, this is a single mom. She has 6 kids. She can't, I just took, and I gave her, as I loved on her as much as I did a family that came in a BMW. You really can't tell with people who tip, to be honest. Anybody could be a good tipper, right?
I think I've seen too many rich people be bad tippers.
I have too. That's what I'm saying. Like,
yeah,
you could have somebody who drove up in a 0-turn mower tip better than somebody who came in a BMW, right? Yeah. But anyway, so I just really believe that I was always taken care of. God always provided. And I wasn't counting those tips, and I wasn't connecting them to a race or an age or a person.
Yeah.
I served as best I could. And I had an awesome time being a server.
Yeah. So I keep picking on Taco Bell because I worked for Taco Bell for 2 years when I was in college to help put myself through college.
Yeah.
Because my parents didn't have. So it's funny. My parents, as they've gotten older, they're like, "Well, we paid for your college." Like, no, you didn't. I worked at Taco Bell. I was like, my college was not that expensive. Like,
They're like, we went to Taco Bell. That's why we paid for your college.
no, I would always have to bring them free food.
No.
Are you kidding me? uh, yeah, my ethics are a little squirrely.
But isn't that funny? They want to be part of your story.
Yeah, but there was one. I still remember there were times at Taco Bell where I was like, man, this trained me so much. And I had a GM that was like, he said, I think every high school kid should have to work fast food as a server or in that, or as a bag boy or something like that in their life. Cause customer service. Cause he was like, it will take you down. It will train you for the rest of your life on how to treat people in those scenarios.
Yeah.
And
How to
I think
serve.
100% true. 100% true.
Yeah. And I wish somebody would teach the bag people. I wish they would say, how do you like your stuff bagged? I wish I prefer just to bag my own because I'm like they have like milk in a bag with bananas and like oil. And I'm like, this is gonna break, you know? I'm like, dude, have you ever taken the groceries in for your mama?
Oh my God. See, you're again the opposite. So my dad, there were two things growing up. Number one was who can last the longest without having to wear pants to work.
Oh, yeah.
So I always wore, and it was always a competition. And then the other one I didn't figure out until I was in my mid-30s was who can carry in the most groceries at one time. And so I would I was in my mid-30s. It's like, hey, he was just trying to get me to bring in more. Damn it. Like, it took me that long to figure that out. And he was like, of course. What are you talking about? But he would give me crap. He was like, hell, you're carrying toilet paper. I'm carrying 2 liters. Like giving me crap about that. But I am the opposite in that there are a lot of times I bag my own groceries and it will be Oreos and bananas and chicken noodle soup and frozen peas. I'm like, just get as much in. But now the bags are so thin.
I know you can't put so much in a bag or they bust.
But it is funny. It's like, I don't want to make 2 trips from the car.
Oh, I don't make 2 trips, Jody. Yeah. You see how tall I am. That's why, because I carry everything in one. My husband's like, did you have to get it all in one trip? I was like, yes, I did.
Yes.
I mean, my dad had a stroke about 15 years ago, so much that he can't bend his left arm. And so he's like, load it up. It's not going to fall. And he does. He puts all the groceries on this arm. And I'm like a little worried, like about his shoulder or something. He's like, load it up. It's not falling.
Probably, I mean, it's probably building muscle.
Maybe. But he will say that. And I do that too. I'm like, load it up. And I carry so much. And my backpack is always so heavy. And my chiropractor's like, how heavy do I want to lift your backpack? And I'm like, probably not today.
So I went out to San Francisco and I bought a bunch of books and I put them in my suitcase.
Oh.
And I put it on and it was like 103 pounds.
Yeah. And over 50, I think you have to pay, right?
I did. I had to pay I think it was like $75. I was like, that would have cost me more to ship.
Yes.
I was like, I'll just but it was funny because I picked it up and put it up there one-handed. And then the guy behind the thing, he went to take it off and he was like, I was like, hold on, can I come back around there and put it on and I had to put it on the thing for him. I was like, hold on, if I had a cell phone, I'd be like, call my dad and fuss at him for me doing that. Because I'm used to just carrying everything at once and just having it. It's so
but I still don't want the bags to break. That's what I mean. That's about the bagging. It's like I might have 15 bags.
Yeah.
But they're all going to stay together. And I'm not going to put my bread and my canned goods together because then they'll be squished.
Oh my God. All right. I only got 2 more questions.
Okay.
We're in
Sorry, Jody.
No. I always joke. We're in hour 17 of the podcast. Thank you for listening. This far. If you made it this far, I'll give you a certified Stanley No prize for getting this far. Is there anybody you would like to work with?
I don't have a dream client or anything. I love working with entrepreneurs that are trying to make it and they think that they have something like a website that they're like, it's just a plumbing site. And I'm like, we can make it a kick-ass, awesome,
Yeah.
reaching your target customer plumbing site. And I love that part. I just love making them look like what they're worth.
Okay. Okay. See, I started one of my friends, because I'm so obsessed with Oreos. She texted
Mm,
me one time and said, "How has Oreo not hired you?" I was like, "That's a good question." They wished me happy birthday last year
they
on
did?
Instagram DMs. Yeah. Yeah. But I have started a list of dream clients, and I'm going to next year, it's in my plan to start doing pieces for those dream clients. And it's hilarious because my dream clients are Oreo, Waffle House. Like, it is not Nike. Screw them. I don't care about them. The Chicago Bears, who have already been mentioned. It's like, those are my dream clients. I don't care
Mm,
about working for Elon Musk.
right.
I would rather. I would love to work with Waffle House. I would love to work with Waffle House.
I think I would love to create something where people could come together and it would be the people from the marketing world, like the entrepreneurs or the people who need us,
Yeah,
and then get I would love to create something so that they could start connecting. And
yeah.
that honestly is more of a dream than a dream client.
So there's another thing that I think you would like is another thing I would love to do is collaborate more with people I care about and respect, like Hannah up at Snakes and Aces.
Yeah.
It's like I told her there was one point during the pandemic. I told her I was like, all right, I know we're not that close, but we're pretty close. I was like, my dream in life would to be able to come up there for a week, and we don't have an idea to start with, and we work up an idea and we print it, whether it's posters or whatever, coasters, t-shirts, whatever. And then you come down here and I'll build a screen print shop in my basement and do the same thing. I was like, and then start doing that. I actually did a grant for an art grant here in town to try and build out a screen print shop in my basement. And I was like, I would like to invite people to come and
Yeah.
play because I'm a single dude, no kids, no pets. I have a spare bedroom. I am a safe person. I try to be a moral and decent human being. So like, come stay with me. And I've got artist friends that teach in like Kansas. That she was like, if you do that, I will come during the summer months. I will come and stay for a month. Because I also want to show off my town. I love this town.
Yeah.
And I want to show people how awesome it is.
I
So
love
that
that.
is, if I could, if money were no object, that's what I would work towards.
Mm. I
So,
would, I think I would have like a residency program as well. So something where people could come and have food and a house.
yeah,
And I've said this before somewhere else, I can't remember where, but um, and then there's like maybe workshops where other people come and they're paying for their day or their week
yeah,
or the weekend, and then and they're working. And I do think there's power in collaboration because you think differently than I think, and when we come together, I think it can be really powerful. And I just think it's fun to support other artists, like have something that we where we all could sell something.
yeah.
um I don't know like how that's just something that God's put on my heart, and I don't know where that's going to go, but it's kind of like I just keep being reminded this week in particular about in my Bible study every day. I'm like, I don't have to know. I just have to have faith. I just don't have to know exactly how it's going to work out. And that's hard. It's hard, especially as like a planner, and I'm making sure everything's done at my house, but it's like I don't know how you're going to do this, right? Like this is bigger than me.
That's what I was saying about struggling with not being taken seriously or any of that
Mm.
stuff. I think that's one of the other things I struggle with is I see these people with these opportunities and stuff, and I want to scream at them and say, stop only being involved when it benefits you.
Yeah.
Like you need to go, like there's a younger artist here in town that she'll go to something once, and if it doesn't benefit her, she never goes again. She doesn't like or comment, do the free stuff, and I kind of want to yell at her. and say,
Mm.
stop making it just about you. You are, it's the Carl Sagan thing. We live on a pale blue dot. You are not, not to quote Fight Club, you are not you are not unique. Like you should realize how lucky you are and help other people. Because yeah.
I think that's where I'm frustrated with my students, but then I also have to think my husband is great at always taking their side. And he reminds me, he's like, well, maybe they're really hurting, Diane. Maybe they really can't spend the gas to do. And I'd be like, well, they could comment, they could encourage, they could share, they could. And he's like, Diane, you just don't know. And I'm like, you're right. And I mean, sometimes my husband is I hate it when he's right, you know? Oh,
Oh my God, that's the best thing in getting to hour 27 of this podcast is you admitting that on the
yeah. Make sure you cut that out. Cut that out. Delete it. I don't want any kind of proof. Yeah.
All right. Well,
but
yeah.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
But that I think that there's because nobody's walked in your shoes, and that's why you're passionate the way you are. And you are that person who goes back to that high school to give those people to show them, hey, I made it out. You can too.
Yeah.
You can. And the girl and there's all these stories of these people persevering, and we all need to hold on to because I don't know what's going on in these other people's lives but it looks like from the outside, it looks like they are like they are not worried about their credit card being rejected at Walmart, when they put $300, or their debit card, like, I'm sorry, you're going to have another form of payment. And you're like, oh crap, you're going to have to put all these groceries back, right? Like this is something that maybe somebody else doesn't get. But I do think that there will be a day when that girl, she will not even realize that she was doing that at some point. Right. And I hope that
hopefully.
And I hope that I always think I would love to do this and you'll be like, oh my God, you are crazy. I would love to be a checkout person at Winn-Dixie when I retire, or some small grocery store, because I think people are just coming in, they're busy. I want to be an awesome checkout person, but I also want to see them. And I want to be like, you doing all right? And I don't want to just small talk. If they want to small talk, I've been a bartender. I know how to small talk, but I also know when somebody is about at the end of their wits and they're just, just about to, and I just think, it's just one thing I could do. I could just maybe cheer somebody up, or if they need an extra $5, I'll just run it and I'm going to pay for the rest of their groceries or something. It's like, it doesn't always have to be with money. And sometimes it's just listening to them. And there are so many old people, or so many people during the pandemic that was the only person they talked to. My friend Will, he would be like, I have to go to the grocery store. I go 3 times a week. I'm like, why do you go 3 times a week? And he's like, Diane, I live alone. I don't see anybody. I am literally alone all the time. The only time I have contact with other people is at the grocery store. And I'm like, oh, I get it.
Yeah. Yeah, that was something during the pandemic, living alone and not having any work, and just how struck to where I started. This is one of those, it sounds like a humble brag, but it's not meant that way. I would start doing for other people what I wish people would do for me. Yeah. And it was just like, no, I feel like karma or whatever will eventually put that out in the world, that if I keep doing this, then I will be a light for somebody, and hopefully somebody won't.
You're super light for people, and you just got to, whatever you need to keep going because you're doing great work, Jody. And I know it seems hard, and I can't wait to see your basement, visiting artist thing. That would be so cool.
Yeah, that kind of bore out of, because my dad loves this city too. And he's been a huge ambassador. He's a former truck driver, and he's been president of his neighborhood organization for close to 30 years. And there's one place where they sold an old farmer's market, which it was shady as crap how they sold it. And they sold it to a developer who put in like a Target and all those. And he was like, you know what? I'm going to allow it, but you have to build me an amphitheater, a walking trail, a park for kids, a water park for all this stuff. So there's acres of stuff. He's like, you have to do that. That's the only way I will be behind this. And they did.
Wow.
And nobody knows he did that. I know he did that. He knows he did
That's
that.
awesome.
Knows he did
You're
that.
like that too.
Yeah. Okay, we'll end on this. Do you know what you would like to do in the next 10 years?
Mow more grass for sure. And I want us to keep my same mower. My husband's always like, I think we're gonna have to upgrade. I'm like, no, I don't want to upgrade. Can't you just fix the one we got? He painted it pink. Not that I'm a pink person, but he did it for fun. I want to just be okay with making more messes. I want to be okay at failing. And if it's something physical that I'm going to be doing, I would like to have more workshops in person where people could really get to know each other, even if it's just 3 days.
Yeah.
And we do work on their business and we do physical things. We make some art or something. And I don't know how that's going to work, but, and just encourage people. And I just want to love on as many people. I don't have like big dreams. I'm a terrible visionary. I tell my friend Mario, I'm like, I don't know. I'm not a good visionary, but that's like, I would like to have a trampoline again. I don't know. That's probably not what you're talking about, but I just think that we are better together. And when we can come, we can help lots of people and we can help each other, you know?
Yeah. I think that's a good moment it's a good point to leave the podcast on. So thank you so much for doing 87 hours of Rambling Man.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And thank you for being so easy to talk to. And just thank you for loving people the way you do, Jody, and just don't give up.
I don't like compliments. Stop
I
complimenting.
know. I don't either, but it's we'll just have some other kind of word we use. Velcro. That's
Velcro.
Instead of thank you, it's just Velcro. And you got to go to Hammer. So I can't wait to see what you bring.
Thank you.